That's in response to how was school?
Correct, sir. I'm hearing that 112 is rethinking coming maybe out of hybrid. It's, with things spiking here a little bit, people are getting a little nervous.
Uh-huh.
But I don't want to talk about my work. It's
We won't.
too depressing.
No, come on.
Oh yeah, it's not good.
Hmm.
I don't mean to smile at that. That's not a good thing. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's
Challenging.
Pressing is that 10/20. I mean, it's difficult for working parents flexibility, but I don't know how people are able to leave to pick their kid up in lunch hour.
Yeah.
Is everybody hearing Lori with some kind of echo chamber?
Yep.
yeah. She's got her Kanye West filter on.
Lori, could you?
Sure.
All right, well, you're coming in as if you're speaking in a tin can. But let's see if we can persevere. Are we all ready?
Okay.
Brian?
I'm ready.
Brian Romes.
I believe I'm ready.
Okay. The workshop meeting of the Park District of Highland Park is called to order on Tuesday, October 13, 2020 at 6:00 p.m. Brian, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Here,
Commissioner Flores Weisskopf,
Here.
Vice President Kaplan,
Here.
and President Ruttenberg.
I am here. Thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda? Brian, Executive Director Romes, anything?
No.
Do any of the commissioners wish to add anything to the agenda?
Nope.
Cal? Terry?
no.
Lori? Okay, well, we'll assume silence means no. All right. Director Romes, has anyone from the public submitted any emails to be read aloud for public comment?
As a matter of fact, I have. I have a list of public comment that I will read aloud. I've actually sent these to the park board as well. I received a few more within the past hour, so I've added those to my list. And if it's okay with you, I will begin reading them now.
Yes, please.
Okay. Dr. Frances Jane Pesic, Park Board Commissioners, I would first like to thank you for serving our community. At the last meeting, you heard an outpouring of gratitude for opening Park Avenue boating facility. If you had a chance to visit on any summer day, it was overflowing with people safely recreating along the shoreline in and on the lake we call home. According to the figures I obtained from the PDHP boat storage, launch pass, parking pass, stand-up paddleboard, and kayak storage, along with the North Shore Yacht Club lease, brought an estimated gross revenue of $100,000 for relatively passive income during a shortened summer season. I believe this is the low end of earning potential for this facility. With proper funding, this facility can sustain and maintain itself for generations to come. I would like to call to action the Park Board to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group so that it can complete the tasks that are listed on the PDHP website. The PDHP is not alone in its struggle with high water levels. In fact, there are specific grants available to coastal communities such as Highland Park. However, we can no longer be reactive, but we must be proactive. We continue to miss grants by neglecting the PDHP's unique assets. Every park district has a tennis court, golf course, swimming pool, playground, but only a few have access to Lake Michigan. Next is Peter Mordini. Good evening, Brian. I'm calling to action the PDHP to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group. Thank you and have a good evening. Jody Mordini. I am calling to action the PDHP to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group. Thank you and have a good evening. Garrett Flynn. I hope this note finds you well. Can you help to note my support to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group in the meeting tomorrow night? Joanne Levine, I'm writing to ask the Park District reconvene the Park Avenue Boating Facility Working Group so they can continue their mission to seek fiscally responsible site improvements that provide long-term access to boating activities. Thank you for your consideration. Julie Graham, Park Board Commissioners, I would first like to thank you for serving our lakefront community. I'm a resident of neighboring Highwood, but I use the Park Avenue boating facility several times a week for recreation with many of my friends who lived in Highland Park. If you had a chance to visit Park Avenue Beach on any summer day this year, it was overflowing with people safely recreating along the shoreline, in and on this lake we call home. I've been happy to invest in the boat launch area via the annual parking pass, and I have purchased for the past several years. Along with revenue from fellow patrons and other proper funding, this facility can sustain and maintain itself for generations to come. I would like to call to action the Park Board to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group so that it can complete the tasks that are listed on the PDHP website, specifically mitigating high water levels to preserve our precious natural resource. Please actively pursue the grants available to coastal communities such as Highland Park on behalf of all the residents and friends of the area. We have unique assets that most worthy of preservation. Thank you for your consideration. Noel Vaughn, I hope you and your family have a good summer and are enjoying the beauty of this fall. I'm reaching out to kindly request the Park District reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group with the goal of finding creative solutions to protect Highland Park's recreational beach and boat launch at Park Avenue. We're so fortunate to have Lake Michigan with our community, and it was evident this summer, especially an increasing number of residents regularly spend their recreational time there. I'm confident with collaborative effort and creativity, we can work together to find a fiscally responsible approach to protecting Park Avenue for generations of Highland Park residents to enjoy. Sean Logan, as an active member of the Highland Park community and as member of 2 park advisory committees with Rick Kupfer, I would appreciate if you would receive my concern about the Park Avenue Beach funding decisions. I've been in contact with numerous local realtors who have expressed frustration that the city has become less desirable for young families. When I started my family here, we visited and enjoyed many of the Park District kids-centered programs at Park Avenue Beach, especially the Sand Trackers program. Recently, 3 families have moved into our neighborhood here in the northeast section of Highland Park, and they have expressed much enthusiasm for participating next summer in programs and family activities at this excellent beach. I know from being on 2 of those committees that the residents can be aggressive enough about how their tax monies are spent, that I had to intervene in the past in Rick's defense during one of our meetings. I'm also well aware that the impacts of COVID-19 has had a tremendous negative hit, but I sincerely believe that our commitment to maintain and better establish this jewel of Highland Park will have a very positive long-term value to Highland Park, into the Park District, into the lives and families of Highland Park. Jason Metnick, Park Board Commissioners, Highland Park has a premier location on the North Shore. It's the lake shore that Highland Park residents have enjoyed perhaps more this summer than any in recent memory. The Park Avenue boating facility was front and center this year, packed from morning to night. This facility set Highland Park apart from other communities, and this facility merits significant attention, time, and dedication of resources to preserve it for our residents. There is no doubt that it both enhances the lives of Highland Park residents, but also adds value to the real estate in Highland Park. Communities along the North Shore who have not been proactive have essentially lost their lakefront beaches and watercraft launching abilities. Highland Park can avoid a similar fate if prompt action is taken. I would like to call to action the Park Board to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group so it can complete the tasks that are listed on the Park District's website. It is abundantly evident that there are several grants that would provide funding to preserve and enhance the Park Avenue boating facility. I urge the Park Board to take action to apply for grants, dedicate capital, and take a renewed look at the Highland Park's boating facility. It is irreplaceable, and yet its loss is both imminent and avoidable. Reconvening the Park Avenue Working Group is the first necessary step to avoid loss of our Park Avenue boating facility. I appreciate your thoughtful consideration and effort. Elisa Drake, I'm ready to call to action the PDHP to reconvene the Park Avenue Working Group. As you may or may not know, Park Avenue Beach is one of our city's true gems and should be prioritized as high as the new residences that are popping up all over. And what do you think one of the appeals of living in Highland Park is over suburbs to our west? The beach. Highland residents regularly visit and use Park Avenue Beach to enjoy the lakefront and water. This summer, residents of all ages enjoyed boating, tubing, skiing, wakeboarding, sailing, kayaking, paddling, jet skiing, etc. I hope you will consider this lakefront space a priority for Highland Park residents and potential residents. Thank you. Jean and David Sogan. The Park Avenue Beach Task Force paused its work last March at the outbreak of the pandemic. We are writing now to ask the Park Board to reconvene the task force. Zoom meetings work. Park Avenue Beach is an amenity that is important to Highland Park residents. We need to figure out a way to save it. In the last 6 months, we have missed deadlines for numerous grants that could have been an important part of the solution package. We should not let such opportunities pass us by. Securing the finances to rehabilitate Park Avenue should be a 2021 priority, and the first step is to reconvene the task force. Laura Knapp, Commodore North Shore Yacht Club. Recommit your money and efforts to the Park Avenue boating facility. The Park District should be proud to use, maintain, and promote this park. The natural beauty of Lake Michigan supports your mission. People walk, jog, fish, gaze, and boated at the lake during COVID-19 pandemic and enjoyed other incredible lake summer at the lake. But as you know, the breakwater will fail within 3 to 4 years, and the facility is desperate need of maintenance and repairs. The North Shore Yacht Club asks the 5 sitting commissioners to do the following. 1, update the expired lease agreement with the city for the South Beach. This will prove that the city and Park District are invested in long-term in this recreation area and can better allocate funds for maintenance and capital improvements. 2, put your Park Avenue boating facility working group back to work. This task force last met 9 months ago in January of 2020. They only completed 2 of 4 tasks and still need to make recommendation to the board for future of the boating amenity and breakwater. Time to choose one of the breakwater and boat launch options that were presented in the $80,000 engineering study completed in 2018. 3, reprioritize the facility. This is not a low priority park, as commissioners have stated. In 2007, 2013, and 2019 survey data should be re-reviewed. User functions and needs at the park should not be separated into power boaters, non-motorized boaters, and non-boaters, as was done in the 2019 survey results. And 4, fund maintenance and capital improvements at the site. Third-party funding will only come if the Park District is invested in the site. OSLED and park grants are available and the federal funds are available, but you can't get them if you do not put minimal funds into the budget for matching grants. Other options include use of the $800,000 development impact fees the Park District received in 2019, or use limited general obligation park bonds. The breakwater boat launch and pier was constructed 40 years ago, and the entire site has not had any updates since 2004. The entire facility should be improved, and the Park District can better optimize revenue opportunities at the site. North Shore Yacht Club member families want boating facility to be around for the future, so we ask for your help in supporting it, maintaining it, and improving it. Let's continue to work together to find the right solutions. The time is of the essence. That is all the public comment. I think you're muted, Barney.
You're right. I apologize for that. Since we're at the lakefront, the next item would be the Rosewood Beach project updates. Director Smith.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going to give an update on 2 projects at Rosewood Beach. First is the boardwalk. So at the August 25th board meeting, Adam Hammond with Smith Group had presented on their findings regarding the boardwalk. Now, this is the boardwalk that runs along the lower parking lot in the ravine. We had Smith Group look into this to determine what caused the leaning in the boardwalk and also to propose some options for repair. Since that time, staff have looked further into this, and we are particularly investigating option 3, which was the lowest cost option to essentially mud jack the concrete slab under the boardwalk. It would be injecting concrete that would raise and level that section of boardwalk. We're finalizing those investigations and anticipate that we will likely be coming to the board at the October 27th meeting with a recommendation, hopefully with the possibility that we'd be able to move forward with the repair if approved sometime this fall. So next we want to touch on the protections for the interpretive cove. So also at that previous meeting, Margaret Boschek with Smith Group presented on the preliminary construction documents for the revetments that have been discussed for both the interpretive cove and the swimming cove. And at that meeting, we also discussed the possibility and possible need for kind of a short-term temporary protection in the interpretive cove. And since that time, staff have also worked with Smith Group to talk about what we're calling kind of a midterm repair. So it would be similar to the revetment, but it would be at a much lower cost, but it would still give us many years of protection. So we've asked her to come back this evening to present a little more information on both the short-term and the midterm protection for Rosewood. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Margaret.
Yes. Hello,
Welcome.
everyone.
Hello, Margaret, and welcome. Where are you?
I am back in Madison. I
Okay.
arrived back this weekend, so it's not as late anymore. I'm wide awake now. No giant coffee sitting next to me.
Thank you.
But it's good to be back. It's good to be back. So yes, as Jeff mentioned, I'm going to present the short-term and long-term that we talked about briefly last time we talked. The infamous word trap bag was used, so we looked a little further into the trap bag solutions. For those who don't know what trap bag is, it's a giant sandbag. I'll show some pictures in that as well. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, if I can find the option. All right, I'm going to share this screen and hopefully this will work. Okay, are you seeing the presentation?
Mhm.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so as I do every time we talk about lake levels and the forecast, and this will play into the discussion of the options that we're going to discuss as well. So looking at, and let me see if I can hide that in case you can see that as well. Looking at the forecast, this is October's forecast, which just came out about a week ago. This little green line that you see here, this is every day, it's the average water level for all of Lake Michigan and Lake Huron as a giant basin. But of course, there are, as we've discussed, fluctuations here and there due to storm events, but this is the average across the entire lake. And you can see that little green line, if your eyes are really good, it is going down. This is normal this time of year. It is fall. We have crested in June and July this year, record setting, as you can see these blue dots right up here. But now we are going into the winter season. Traditionally, January is our lowest month, but the forecasts are even showing that we could possibly be lower in February and March. And the reasons for that, I'll get into a little bit more, but this is good news. The water levels are starting to go back down. However, they will remain higher than normal for months, possibly even years to come. There is a corrective measure, but it isn't immediate. This red line at the bottom is our average running across, and that would be, of course, a yearly average. So what causes our lake levels to be high is that balance of precipitation versus evaporation. So looking at the precipitation of this year, this is January through September, and just giving a look at where we've been at, because as I've mentioned to you before, the past 5 years of 2019 going back were the wettest on record. We had extremely high amount of precipitation in the Great Lakes watershed. So we do see that Michigan and Wisconsin are a little higher than average, but Minnesota is a little bit low, as well as New York, all of those being within the Great Lakes Basin. But those that influence us directly here on Lake Michigan are primarily Wisconsin and Michigan. Illinois actually has a very tiny little watershed contribution, so we don't tend to include Illinois in the watershed count. So it is a little on the high side, but not significantly so. It's more in that average range. The good news is the difference from last month, we are 4 inches down, and the projection shows that by November we should be another 4 inches down. So that's 8 inches within 2 months. That's great. That's a nice steady decline, which we didn't have last year. If you remember, we got stalled with the amount of precipitation happening, and the warm weather. Evaporation was equaling precipitation versus evaporation normally winning this time of year, so the water level stayed high. So looking even further though at what's going to happen this winter, I've pulled these 2 reports. These are forecasts put out by the National Weather Service and NOAA, and this is looking at temperature. Now this first one is November through January, and it shows a little increase or above normal temperatures for the start of the winter. This means a very slow start of ice buildup within the Great Lakes, and specifically Lake Michigan, which means our lakes will be open longer. You remember last year, I don't think they ever really closed. We had open waters well into January and February, which we don't normally have. But it does look like we're going to have a repeat of that, or more than likely have a repeat of that through January. And then in February and April, we're more on track of normal temperatures, which are very cold, and in which case ice should start to build up. So what I want you to take from this is that the warmer winter will likely mean less ice and more wave impact on our shore. That just means more erosion and movement of sand. So let's put this in the context of Rosewood Beach, and we're only going to talk about the interpretive cove here. Jeff was very nice and supplied me with some pictures taken today. It looks like it was a gorgeous day down at Rosewood Beach, which I hope you enjoyed it while you were down there, Jeff, and didn't run back to the office or your home office too quickly. But this is looking at the interpretive cove, and we have a nice wide sand beach in front of the interpretive cove. So that doesn't give me any concern whatsoever of rapid erosion occurring anytime too soon as water levels continue to go down, and they even look pretty calm and pretty low on that beach right now. Now, this beach doesn't naturally recover quickly. It will take a little bit of time. So this steep berm that you see right there, that'll be there likely through the winter, but that is your defense, and that's holding it back from the foundation of your interpretive buildings. So that's a good thing to see. On the other hand, in the other direction, we see the infamous chaise lounge and the sand underneath that getting pulled out. Now, this has always been the problem area. It is directly behind the entrance of the two breakwaters, and it has always eroded back to that chaise lounge. It doesn't pass beyond the chaise lounge, but it is at that location, and we've tried multiple things to clean that up and to refill it, but the lake wants to take it away. So here's another picture from the other direction, and we see that just opened up just underneath the chaise and the boardwalk there, and the sand around the corner heading into the opening of the ravine outfall. So we want to talk about trap bags and the long-term and short-term solutions that are a little bit cheaper using the trap bag solution. Now, as I mentioned, they are sandbags, giant sandbags, and they come in a series. They are all attached together, and they will frequently have a wire rope running through them so that if one punctures, it doesn't completely separate from its neighbors. It's actually held all together. It won't actually rip apart. So it's a pretty stable system, but again, it is a sandbag, and as a sandbag, it is flexible, and it is made out of a geotextile. This is a fabric on the outside here. Now, this picture also shows a bit of a lid. So it covers over the top. This is important because we have waves hitting the front of this and they want to jump over the top. So if that was left open, it could actually suck out the sand from the top. So you would want to purchase the lids to go along with the trap bag system. Now here is, this is a graphic that they made for a client in Michigan. So ignore the word concrete because we will not be using concrete inside of these. We are looking at a sand solution, but this gives you an idea of how you can stack them up to create almost an MSE wall, almost a vertical wall to hold back sediment and material on the lee side. Now, we wouldn't need anything nearly this tall, but it gives you an idea of how they are stacked. And that they also include then dewatering drains and things like that. If this was a permanent solution, then that is something that we would want to install. But the first thing we're going to look at is more temporary short-term solutions. So here's an actual picture of it. I have seen them both in green and black. They unfortunately do come with the logo on the front. I believe that we could ask that the bags not come with a logo, but we might even have to pay more for that. But here is the lid on top. I understand the lids are black, and then they staple them down so that you have to purchase staples and the staple gun as well. And that's how this system is held together. So looking at a short-term protection, we are only looking at this location around the Shays Lounge and the boardwalk there. I propose that we place a double layer of trap bags just around the Shays Lounge and the boardwalk and tie it back into the boardwalk on the other side. That would essentially be in that location there of the red line. We wouldn't need to go any further to the north, which is more in front of the interpretive center, because we currently do have that nice breadth of sand in front of it, which I don't believe is going to go anywhere this winter. So looking at just that, this is a cross section going through that Shays Lounge. I marked off where the parking lot is. That is on the back side of that boardwalk. And although Trap Bag might have their own solution based on things that they have done in the past and just working with them on other projects, this seemed like a reasonable approach to put two 5-foot trap bags, one behind the other. Now this does require minor excavation and then filling these bags with some sand. Now that sand could either come locally from the source of sand that you already have, or we can purchase more sand and bring that in. And the nice thing is you can always reuse that sand as nourishment then in springtime or when you no longer need the trap bags. To prevent undercutting and having the trap bags actually fall into them, they do recommend having some type of scour stone placed out front. Now they have shown pictures where they just put this into a giant sack. They're smaller stone between 6 and 10 inches, usually more rounded, and they're held into this geotextile sack, and it is anchored underneath this first trap bag. Now, how big this would need to be, that would have to be determined by Trap Bag. I've made 3 phone calls to them and unfortunately haven't been called back, but I understand they're a bit busy at the moment. So I will continue to reach out to them. But working with them on previous projects, I have received a good amount of literature from them and also pricing, which I have used for figuring out these options for you. So using those costs that they gave me, there are different size trap bags. I have highlighted the 5, 4, and 2 foot, and they have different costs. This is per linear foot of just the bag. Now, each bag does require to be filled with something. In this case, we are talking about sand. So I took the tonnage of sand per linear foot in one cell and figured out how many tons of sand would be needed. Now, I have written this down as if we were purchasing it. This does not need to be purchased. You can use materials that you already have on site and just fill it, but you would need that much tonnage of sand. I can convert that to cubic yards if you prefer. If you do use your local sand, of course, then this cost goes away. The rest of the costs seem reasonable with some grading, some erosion control. Now, mobilization, this was taken from Keno and their mobilization costs for placing sand. However, the project is pretty small in terms of how much the mobilization is. So this, while it is a bit of a guess based on their previous mobilization costs, it could be variable because this is such a smaller project. So if we were to take out some of that and take out some of the sand costs, then you can see where this cost would come down. But this is being conservative and a bit on the high end for 100,000. Okay, so if we go to a more medium-term protection, one of the major concerns that me and my team have brought up to Trap Bag is that we live in an environment that has ice, and ice is going to just rip right through the geotextile that they use on the outside of their sandbags, trap bags. So in response to that, they propose actually putting in a wire mesh into their bags so that if ice were to push up against it and even cause some little tears, that wire mesh would act as a secondary geotextile that would hold the sand in or the filling in, whatever it is. So this is the solution that they came up with. There is a small cost associated with this, but I have not been able to nail them down as to how much that cost actually is. But for a more long-term solution, we would recommend putting in the wire mesh because that would help protect the geotextile bags from any type of puncture or damage. Now, this is a lot like the revetment walls that I was showing you earlier that we're using the concrete, but this is a buried solution. So this is the medium-term solution that I put together that looks at removing the chaise lounge because that is, again, a problem area. And this would actually, if the chaise was there, would push out further and frequently become exposed and therefore more at risk of damage. So this looks at cutting in an excavation, very similar to the stone revetment that we were looking at for the long-term solution, and placing the geotextile trap bags into that hole and stacking them up. So this solution uses a combination of the 5 foot, the 4 foot, and the 2 foot bags, and it has some scour stone in front of it. The depth at which I have chosen is based on the location of the clay layer as determined by the Army Corps of Engineers when they installed the original system and the interpretive center. This would prevent any future scour. We can lift the base and just put some stone underneath as a bedding layer, but we just end up taking on a little bit more risk. So it's a bit of a trade-off. So I have shown this a bit more conservative as on that bed layer and then extending up. Now you can see that there is sand over the top of it. This is a cross-section that was taken from one of the surveys of the area. So it does show that steep drop-off, but normally, especially at low water, we would see this filled in and you would never even know it was there. So a lot like the revetment, it only becomes exposed when you need it and when scour and erosion is such that it's getting pretty far back toward the parking lot. So it acts as a protector. Now, I do not know, these are our new options in the Great Lakes. And so I can't say with any certainty how long of a service life this will provide because it is new technology. But I do feel comfortable based on the amount of sand you have, on the position of where this is back at the back end of the beach, and also putting those wire mesh in there, that this will give you at least 15 years of protection for the parking lot on the backside. So this is that medium-term protection option. Looking at costs associated with this, there is a bit more excavation required and then regrading of that material. So that's both in there. The mobilization is a bit higher as well because it requires a bit more machinery brought in to do this work. There's a number of different trap bags brought in and a lot more sand to fill those trap bags then. Again, this was calculated as being new sand versus sand that you already have. So without that, you could subtract out that $34,000. But adding all of this up, this comes to a little under $300,000. So in comparison to the long-term, which I've included in here, the long-term solution with the sheet pile was $600,000, just for your memory. So looking at that all together, we have a short-term solution, which is in the range of $70,000 to $100,000. The medium term is about $300,000, and the long term is $600,000. So permits, I did have some calls into IDNR. A permit would definitely be needed for the medium and long-term solutions. For the short-term solution, you're out of the water line. I do not believe you need a permit to put in what we consider a temporary protective measure. That has to be confirmed and has not been confirmed, but you are outside the water line, so you should be okay to do that. So scheduling, if you are moving ahead with the short-term protection of the Chase Lounge and the subsequent parking lot, then you would want to install that as soon as possible. We are heading straight into the fall season, and storms are starting to become more intense. And they will amplify over the next 3 months, peaking in January and February. Those are normally your stormiest months. The medium and long-term solution, I would say just install those sometime prior to Memorial Day. They can be installed in the winter. There's no problem with excavation at that time. And just to also highlight that none of these solutions prevent sand erosion due to storms in front of these systems. They just prevent them on the backside. So they are defensive measures, but they're not there to hold sand on the front end or promote accretion within any of those coves. And that's all the slides I have put together. I will leave it up, but I'm happy to take some questions.
All right, well, let me start. Brian, is there anything that the staff would like to add?
No, not at this time. I think we are looking for some feedback from the board on the direction that staff should take this. But we're happy to answer any questions, obviously.
Well, let me just ask a question and then we'll go around. What does the staff feel would be the solution that they would recommend?
Jeff, do you want to take that, or do you want to allow me to take it?
No, I'm happy to take that.
Go ahead.
Staff feel at this point that the medium-term solution, it seems like a very viable solution. We've been putting some time into it and seem very interested in looking at this. We feel that it would give us an extended amount of time, as Margaret said, likely over 15 years, plus it's at half the cost of the steel revetment. And as far as the short-term solution, this is something we've been exploring. However, as Margaret said, this is something that if we do move forward with this, it would really is just to protect us in the next 3 months. But it's something that we would need to put in immediately. And it's taken a little more coordination and planning than we were hoping. And as Margaret said, we're having trouble hearing back from TrapBack at this time. So to be honest, I'm not sure how realistic that would be as of today, but we are continuing to pursue it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the commissioners now, unless Brian or Jeff has more. I'll start with Cal Bernstein.
Barney, can you come back to me? Let me just digest this a little bit.
Okay, we'll start with Terry.
Well, it would help me if you can go back to the maybe the first diagram you had put. Yeah, go back. Is that the first one?
This is the short-term protection.
Right.
There were pictures that she put up of what it might look like.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I've seen this. So we're talking, okay, go back to the first one you landed on. Stay there for just a second.
Back one?
No, go back that one.
There you go. Okay. So there is that gap. I mean, you felt comfortable between the interpretive cove and that little gap there where the red line is,
Yep.
right?
Right here?
Yeah. You
Yes.
felt fine that not having any kind of system.
It is thick enough there, and that we wouldn't need to reach the actual end of the sheet pile, but I did put in some additional linear feet beyond the measurement, just for excess and contingency. So this length here was about 110 feet, and all of my calculations were on about 120.
Okay, then go to the next one, please. Okay. Oh, back one.
Oh,
No.
back one.
Yeah, almost. It was
The gra-
one with-
The graphic, that one.
right
yeah.
there. Okay.
Got it.
So these, for whatever reason, maybe it's just the way my mind works, but these are always hardest ones for me to digest and understand. So
Sure.
if I can just, can you help me just visualize this? Am I looking at it so that the right is the lake?
The right side is the lake, yes.
Okay,
So
okay,
let me see if I can draw on this. Oh, I can annotate. There we go. Let's see, draw. If I were to draw this, can you see that?
Yeah,
Okay, great. So what we're doing is we're sitting over here and we're looking in this direction.
yeah, okay.
Okay. And so that is and I will just go ahead and stop that. There we go. Oh, and look at that, it's still there. But that's okay. That's the way that we are looking. So the Shays Lounge is at this location, the parking lot is behind it, and the boardwalk is in between. We
Right.
then have this being the beach on this side.
That's it. So this is basically essentially sitting on top of the sand.
Yes, there
That's-
is some excavation to protect one to the other, to sit it on a flat base. But yes,
And does that slightly buried configuration, does that add to the stability of the trap bags?
well, the scour stone is what's going to prevent the scouring from underneath the front. Oh, I must have hit something. Sorry about that. Let me go back there. That front scour stone prevents the scour and the undermining of that first trap bag. And the second one is actually held in place by the protective nature of the first bag. So a little bit of excavation is needed to give it a flat location, but it's the second one that rises about 2 feet above the first that gives the ultimate protection to the back.
Okay, so a person sitting standing with their back to the water, staring at
Yes.
the Shays Lounge,
Yes.
okay, would be seeing this scour stone wedging in the trap bags to keep the the stuff coming up from underneath the benches.
They would, if they were on the beach looking at this, they would see the trap bags, one on top of the other or right behind the other. And then they would see this black bag, which is holding the scour stone. Now, there was a previous picture that looked somewhat, let me see if I can get back there. It is still just a graphic, but here they call it a very interesting spelling of scour. But it is a scour skirt is what they've called it. And they just have a black geotextile with material on the inside. Now, in other diagrams that I've seen them put together, this has been rock, which is the much better way to do it than whatever this brown nonsense is that they're showing.
Okay. So cheaper, should I say, less expensive,
Yes.
but also because the middle option would be buried,
Mhm.
much more of an eyesore than the middle.
Yes. Yes. So this is to give you immediate protection of everything on the backside of these trap bags. So these trap bags are holding the sand that is underneath the Shays Lounge and protecting the parking lot. For the midterm, now the same midterm could be pushed forward and pushed in front of the Shays Lounge, which I have removed in this picture, but it will likely become exposed as this is where the sand wants to be. This is how far it wants to be. We've seen it time and time again. So this is buried on the backside of that parking lot, but yes, it is a similar wall and it's completely buried. You will not see it.
Can I jump in and just, I want to clarify one thing about the options. So when we're talking about a short-term option, we're talking about something that would simply get us through to spring in case we're concerned that there's not enough sand to protect the parking lot this fall and winter. And while we're calling them small, short, medium, and long-term options, the idea is that staff will likely recommend the medium or the long-term option to be done in the spring, regardless of whether or not we do the short-term option. So we'll recommend either the medium or the long-term. And then the question is, in addition, would we want to also do the short-term in between? That's the short-term option, because it's exposed. It won't get us beyond this spring. It's really just for this year if we're concerned.
Mhm.
So anyway, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so we're really talking about the midterm was somewhere in the
300.
it was almost 300.
Yes.
And the short term was 70, something like that.
70 to 100, depending on how much mobilization was going to be.
So the midterm, honestly, is really, you're talking about $360,000 to $400,000. Because if we're going to do both.
And so I guess the question, Margaret, do you want to speak to, having seen what the beach looks like today, whether or not you feel it's necessary to do the short term? Now, once again, it's a proactive measure, but.
Right. So looking at where the sand is today, and knowing that we are heading into a warmer winter where sand can get eroded, we remember where it was before we put in the nourishment last time, that the chaise was completely undermined and the sand was creeping back behind the chaise. If I can back up a little bit. I'll back up one more. That sand was definitely underneath the chaise somewhere back here. That is possible again as water levels remain high. So it can keep eating away at that material. So looking at where it is right now, you will get through to next season. And especially if your plan is to go ahead with a medium or long term, you would have to excavate that anyway to place in this material to then put it back. So if the lake stole it, it's not the worst thing in the world, because you are bringing in new material to fill this back in. You would otherwise excavate a hole, find a temporary storage location, and then put that material back in. Now, one thing I will mention about the short term is you'll notice I used 2 5-foot trap bags. 2 5-foot trap bags are used in the medium term solution. So if you were to go ahead and purchase these trap bags now, they arrive reasonably quickly. We've purchased them down in Northwestern University, and they arrived in 2 weeks. So if you can purchase them, as long as you have a place to store them, it's up to you if you want to install them now for the winter and then reuse them. That does mean double handling. It means filling it with sand and then taking that sand back out and not destroying the trap bag so that you can reuse it, or you just have them on hand that you say, it's starting to scour. We know that there's some issues. They're pretty quick to install. Once you have a contractor on hand, you can get the whole thing in less than 2 days.
But what about emptying them and preserving them?
Correct. That's a great question. I think in most cases that's a lot harder to do, because you would have to excavate out from the trap bag itself without actually tearing it apart.
Right.
So I think there's
probably done by hand.
Somewhat, yeah, until they can be pushed forward and actually dumped.
Mm-hmm. So I think what Jeff and Margaret were saying, it's possible to do the short term if we're concerned about what could occur over this winter. And then we would have purchased the trap bags, which would then be reusable for the long term. So there is some cost savings on the 300 side. And, who knows, maybe it comes out 50,000 over or under. But there is some cost savings. It's a question, I think, what Jeff is saying of, do we need to do the short term? And I believe, Margaret, you're comfortable that we might not need to do the short term.
I don't believe you have to do the short term, no.
Okay, Terry, was that getting towards where you were going?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my next question, my last question, was simply going to be if we were just going to do a short term and also do the mid or long term, is there a less expensive short term? You know, I think Cal had originally brought up sandbags. You know, he probably didn't know anything about trap bags, maybe he did. But is there something that costs, you know, $20,000 that we would just get through the winter with instead of 70 to 60 to
Right.
100?
Well, sandbags, if we're talking about traditional sandbags that are used for flooding, those are purposely sized so that they are easily movable by man. These obviously aren't the trap bag, but the flip side of that is that a wave can't move it either. You have a good amount of energy coming up and hitting that shoreline. Anything small like that, you've seen those rocks get moved. If they can move a rock, they can move something definitely as small as a sandbag. So a simple, ordinary sandbag, I would not recommend. And off the top of my head and the racking of my head early on, I wasn't coming up with a $20,000 solution for getting you through the winter, particularly with large storms such as the one that we had last January at high water level, and a very big storm that wreaked havoc in your area.
Okay, I mean, so is it basically just sandbags or trap bags? And sandbags there's nothing else?
Nothing that is easily movable.
Sorry, when we were posed this original question, this is what we looked into, and in the end, this is the most viable short-term solution we came up with. Well, understandably, it is not low cost by any means. It would be the most low cost short-term solution that we've been able to develop that we're comfortable would not wash away in one large storm.
Okay.
All right, Terry?
I'm
Should we-
done.
All right.
Yeah, Terry, did you have any preference or any comments regarding the midterm use of sandbags versus the long-term use of the sheet pile wall?
Or do I wait to hear all the questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just would throw this out there that I have been on the finance committee meetings, and I would be interested in learning, you know, what money we have set aside for that, and how that affects other items on our green print and our long-term plans and things like that.
And we will be touching on that in the next presentation on the capital plan.
Okay, so I'll wait till I hear that.
Okay. Lori?
Hi, can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The only question I had, and I apologize if I missed this, but how do we determine whether or not we have sand or if we're going to purchase it?
So the sand can be pulled from upland locations. I wouldn't, of course, recommend anything that is vegetated, but it doesn't require, I know the tonnage sounds like a lot, cubic yards, it's not overly significant. You would have the ability, you would have the storage to fill them for the short term.
So what, as far as the our staff's recommendation, what is the decision there as to whether we have the sand or do we need to purchase it?
So it's really going to depend on the status of the beach at the time that we do the installation. I do feel that for the most part, we've been planning to purchase the additional sand. That's the mindset we've taken with the planning for the project. It would build out the beach a little bit. If we were to use the current sand, the slope is not going to change. The the beach is not going to expand at all. So if there is some advantage in purchasing that sand, it's not necessarily lost. But I think in the end, it's going to really come down to when we do that installation, seeing where the erosion stands. We may not have a choice but to purchase sand. So I think it's safest when we're planning, whether it's in the capital budget or just looking at this project as a whole, we consider the need to purchase sand. And if we don't have to, then we can just see that as a savings in the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Brian?
Yes, I don't have any questions. I understand the project. I understand the need for the project. But I'm sitting here listening to all this. What's bothering me is that we're continuously pouring money into one of our 3 beaches. And it's almost enough. It's disturbing to me. We've got a whole lot of other expenses, and every other meeting seems to be Rosewood Beach expenses. So I do understand it, Margaret. Bless you.
Thank you.
I understand it. I don't have any questions. It's my only comment.
Okay. Cal?
Okay, thanks for letting me gather my thoughts. And let's, Margaret, let's start at the beginning. What's
Yeah.
the goal? What's the goal of this project?
The goal of the long and short-term projects,
Yes.
it is to protect the parking lot, as as I believe we are trying to do. The parking lot does not have its own foundation system, so we are trying to prevent the erosion from extending so far back that it undermines the parking lot and causes a lot more damage there.
So with regard to whether it's the short or the medium term or the long term program, what is the future of the Chase Lounge that's currently located in this location?
So for the short term, the Chaise Lounge remains. If water levels continue to go down, there is the option of salvaging it for some point of time, but we know that this area is at high risk. And if water levels and when water levels rise up again, that area will again be undermined. So for the future of it, whether you choose to keep it in the short term or the long term, it is a high risk area. It would alleviate your risk to remove that Chaise Lounge and put it at another location because it is enjoyed by the public, but its location is difficult to hold any type of boardwalk or Chaise Lounge there.
So let's put the short-term project aside for a second. So the medium and the long-term both contemplate removing that Chaise Lounge?
They both show the wall, whether it be a riprap or revetment or the trap bag being up against the parking lot, which is its main goal, is to protect that parking lot. And also then it keeps the that barrier submerged for a longer period of time and more time, because once it becomes exposed, it is more likely to cause a rapid release of sand from in front of it because the reflection is now higher. So we want to keep it as buried for longer.
So in addition to the Chaise Lounge, it's my recollection that part of the boardwalk cantilevers over that area also. So in addition to the Chaise, there is also a boardwalk there. So what's the future of the boardwalk, that boardwalk area under the medium or the long-term solution?
Yes, that boardwalk would also be removed, as well as the piles would be removed the best that they could, or cut off within the area that's being excavated.
So from between, let's say, the south portion of the beach to the interpretive center, the way you're going to access that interpretive center is through the parking lot. You'll no longer be able to walk along the boardwalk to get there?
No, I'm sorry. There is a small boardwalk on the back side. It is a little hard to see in this image, but this boardwalk would remain. So the wall itself, whether that be the riprap or the trap bag, is placed in front of this boardwalk here,
Okay,
which holds
that
the
passage
sand
area.
and pine behind it. Exactly.
Okay,
So it's
that,
everything past this location that we are talking about. removing.
So it's everything east of that portion of the boardwalk that will remain. You're looking to remove, and then and after removing it, either through the medium or the long-term solution, whether it's through some type of track bag or some type of bagging system or metal or steel revetment, that will then the sand will be filled in from there. So from that boardwalk, will there be sand going from there all the way down to the lake levels? Is there going to be a drop off there, or is it just going to be a gradual slope to the water?
Oh, it's going to be regraded to a gradual slope down into the water.
So it's similar to, as Terry is pointing out, the area directly to the north between this area and the interpretive center. It's basically the sand will come up to that boardwalk.
Yeah, yes, the sand will come up to the boardwalk, but just as it is with the interpretive cove, I'm sorry, the interpretive center, there is and I'll just see if I can back up while we're talking. There is this berm of sand in front of the interpretive center. There would be the same type of berm coming out from that boardwalk. Now you have to imagine it because you can't see it in this image, but that same type of berm would come out here and come on down into the water.
So,
Cal, excuse me for a second. Margaret, go back one slide, please.
Sure. To here?
Yeah, this slide. And just for Cal's benefit, the picture on the right,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I meant to say, the picture on the left shows the boardwalk that will remain that goes to the interpretive center.
got it.
That
Okay.
is correct.
So let's keep this picture. Thanks, Barney. It's actually a good illustration. This picture to the right. So the idea is to remove that chaise lounge. It looks like part of the boardwalk will be removed because I believe there's also, isn't there like a bench right there also?
Yes.
Okay, is that bench planning to be removed?
Yes.
So that bench will be removed, and then from that bench to the west, how many feet are intended to be removed until you get to that passageway boardwalk that we were just talking about?
Sure. So I'm just going to move forward to this image again. Now I do zoom in here, but it's not a great image. So let me see if I can draw on this a little bit. There's your bench right here. Okay. Here's your chaise lounge right there. You can see it?
Yes.
And I apologize, I am drawing with my mouse. So this portion is boardwalk and chaise, and it goes to here. The rest of this would remain, but this portion, this L-shaped peninsula, is in that area that is at high risk. We can even see it in this image here, that this concave shoreline shape is extending to this area. So what I'm proposing is that we place the protection for the parking lot against this secondary boardwalk, the one on the back, that protects not only the boardwalk then, but also the parking lot.
So the cost to remove that portion of the boardwalk, the chaise lounge and the bench, is that baked into these figures?
It is, yes. There is the cost of removal for the long term and the midterm. Now, I did not include any cost of disposal. I don't know how much is going to cost for them to haul it off and get rid of it, just the removal of it. Some of this material can be reused in other locations.
So what is the additional distance? Now, what's it? I mean, give me ballpark. I know you're not going to be able to give me an exact number, but
Right.
ballpark, by removing that area, how much of the improvements, we use the word improvements, how much are we removing? How much are we putting we pushing back towards the west?
Pushing back toward the west.
Yeah, we're moving that because that's going to be something. That's going to be sand or revetment or something. How many feet is that? 20 feet, 15 feet?
We're talking about this distance
Yes.
here.
Yes.
I believe that is about 30 feet.
So it's about 30 feet. So we're pushing back the pedestrian access. We're pushing that back 30 feet. So there'll be 30 feet more of either under the medium or the long-term plan, there'll be 30 feet of additional beach there because we're taking away the at grade or above grade improvements.
Yes, I believe that statement is true, that there would be 30 more feet of open sand at this location at a minimum. At low water, sand would of course be in front of that as well.
So let's say we decide not to do either the medium or the long-term revetment, because what we've talked about in the past is that the sand replenishment has been very successful. I remember I'm going to hold you to that 80% figure that you told us a year ago, that you were 80% confident that it was going to be successful. So if we basically remove that 30 feet of improvements, and then we put additional sand where that 30 feet is, will that provide, because as we talked about, with that additional additional sand that we've put in over the last 2 years has been able to protect the existing improvements further to the south, both the recreational and also especially the recreational beach. We just did that too.
Yes.
The cove. What would we accomplish by putting more sand there in that 30 feet to create that additional buffer?
Okay. Well, not all coves are created equal. We do find that the swimming beach and the recreational beach are faring better than the interpretive cove, particularly just in this one location. If we look at the nourishment, say in front of the interpretive center, that has held pretty well. There has been some loss, but it has held a barrier in front of that interpretive cove. The area that appears to be the problem is this one directly in front of the Shays Lounge. That is just the focal point of waves and erosion within this cove. And it's also compounded by the fact that the ravine outfalls here and pushes that sand as well. It is just a problem area. So if we were to remove this system, the removal of it alone is not going to replenish that beach. It is still going to want to erode back at this location. What we are ultimately doing is putting in that buried wall, that revetment of trap bag or riprap, to prevent further erosion to extend into the parking lot. Now, this would only happen at high water scenarios, which we've had for the past few years, which is why we've had issues at this location. At low water, wouldn't be a problem. But what we're ultimately protecting is our investment in the parking lot. We are not solving the problem of erosion at this hot spot within this cove.
So as you anticipate moving forward, if we did this project, we would still continue to have erosion in this area because it's directly exposed to the wave action coming from the lake. So this project will not do anything, or I shouldn't say that, would not mitigate the erosion that we're seeing in this specific location.
That is correct.
So the revetment or the bags or whatever the medium or the long term, if the erosion continues, what's the likelihood of those structures being exposed?
Well, they are pretty far back within that cove. This area has extended further back. It has eroded more than typical coastal engineering suggests that it should. The other coves are acting more in line with what we anticipate based on our knowledge of wave penetration through a gap opening and how far back that energy travels. We have multiple contributors to the erosion of the sand at this area, and therefore it's not falling in line with any type of theory or expectation, and would require an analysis just of this area to understand it, which we have not undergone the numerical input of stormwater and waves and everything else. So I can't say exactly how far back it will go. What I'm saying is that the wall is back there to protect the parking lot. It may become exposed at some point in time, and if it is, it's there to prevent further erosion and damage to your parking lot. I can't say how likely it is to become exposed, but I would imagine within its lifetime and within our lifetime, it will at some point be exposed and do its job.
So, so this project, basically, the goal of this project is to protect the foundation and the parking lot. It will not attempt to solve the erosion issue that we're having at this one point, this one issue.
That's correct.
So
That
that
is
will
correct.
continue, and in some point in the future, are we going to address that, or is it just something we're just going to have to basically live with?
Your erosion is directly aligned with the high water levels. As water levels fluctuate, when they become high again, this will become a problem. And when they're low, this will no longer be a problem.
So this will be a chronic problem with high lake levels, and with low lake levels, we should not have an issue there.
Correct.
And so then we could just basically move sand around in order to smooth it out at that point, so it slopes properly. And low lake levels.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the parking lot. So what is exactly are we trying to protect on the parking lot? Is it the pavers, the foundation? I'm not familiar how that parking lot was constructed. So I know they're pavers at grade. So is there a foundation underneath the parking lot?
There is no foundation underneath, I should say, adjacent to the sand structure. So erosion would go underneath the pavers and the parking lot, causing sinkholes to happen and those pavers to start to come apart.
So that's what we're trying to avoid, is having those pavers be compromised, so that that area could not be usable, and then we would have an expensive fix of the parking lot sometime in the future.
Correct.
And that will occur if the lake levels stay high, and the wave action would progress. Right now, it's coming up to where that chase is, but you're saying it could in the future go that additional 30 feet to get to the passageway boardwalk, which I'm calling, and then eventually to the parking lot.
It is not out of the realm of possibility that could happen. Army Corps of Engineers is predicting that we could exceed our historic highs in the future due to climate change and increased precipitation. So
let's talk about that a little bit. So obviously we've had this historical norms. Back in the 80s, we had high lake levels. We had low lake levels as recent as, let's say, 10 years ago. Or I think when we did the project originally, 7 or 8 years ago, we had low lake levels. So really what the idea behind this project is that there's the unknown of climate change, and that how that's going to impact the lake levels going forward, that we can envision a situation where, due to climate change, it become more prevalent that the parking lot would be in danger, rather than under just a normal cyclical 20 or 30 year or 40 year cycle of the lake.
Well, we have just hit historic highs, and we know how far back the cove has receded due to that historic high and where it stopped. We did nourish, and it ate that nourishment, and it forced it back to where it wanted to be, but that wasn't all the way at the parking lot. Had we not have put nourishment there, it would have continued to eat away at any available sand until it reached stability. And with the amount of stormwater coming down the ravine and the waves coming up and eating that away, it's impossible to say exactly where that would have been with the high water levels that we just had.
Yeah, so it's the combination of, like, on bad rain events where we have water gushing through the ravine, and then the high lake levels, that's all combining to create a perfect storm in this location.
It does. It's a combined effect that pushes that sand around in this cove and pushes it also out of that corner.
And the heavier sand that we've installed just doesn't is not able to handle that amount of energy.
Well, I wouldn't say that it hasn't handled it. It has held steady in many locations and is doing a better job staying within the cove than the smaller sand. But it is not a complete static system.
I'm going to ask you for a percentage again, and you could tell me. You don't have to give it to me if you don't want to. But
Okay.
if you had to put a percentage, a likelihood, if you were betting first, now you can DraftKings, you can bet on sports in Illinois. If you
Yes.
if you were going to put a bet down on whether the lake levels or whether there would be an issue with the parking lot that could compromise the parking lot, where would you put that percentage at?
Oh, goodness. I know you write down all of the percentages and numbers that I say, so
Or you want to do
remiss.
odds? We can do odds instead if you want.
What are the odds? Well, from what they say, I believe in the cyclical nature of Lake Michigan, and it is now on its downward trend and righting correction. Climate scientists, and I do believe in climate change, do say that we're going to get more precipitation. So I believe that it will remain above a norm and a new norm will be set. I don't believe that the parking lot is an immediate danger, but that is also due to the contributions that you have made to this cove of sand and protective measures. Ultimately, at some day in the future, it will become a problem if nothing is done.
And we
I
don't know
can't say when that's going to happen, right?
So
I
you're
cannot say
saying,
when that's going to happen. It's not going to happen this year. It's likely not going to happen next year. But 10 years down the road, it very well could.
so in your professional opinion, that this is a necessary preventative measure in order to protect the parking lot. So I just want to get back to what you just said. You said that you don't believe that the parking lot's in danger this year, next year, but maybe in 10 years, where one of the options is really only good for 15 years or more, depending on how it is. So is that really is that realistic to use that 15-year option when we're just, theoretically, we may not have an issue for another 10 or 15 years with regard to the parking lot?
Right. Well, okay. My 15-year estimate for the trap bag solution is not based on it being impacted by waves for 15 years. It's also not based on the degradation of the material itself. It's going to be buried and not influenced directly anytime soon, particularly if it's placed on the backside next to the parking lot. The 15-year is a safety factor for myself as well, because this is unproven technology that says anything could puncture it and it could start to fall apart. Rock revetments and breakwaters have been used since the Middle Ages. So we know how they function, how they work, how long they last if designed well. We don't know that with trap bag. So it's a guess and an estimate that 15 years based on its location away from the shoreline, that will continue to give you protection for at least that long. If the water never gets to it, it could last forever.
So the question isn't the question that the materials are going to deteriorate, so it's no longer, it will compromise its integrity, or is it that if it ever gets activated, where it gets exposed and the waves are hitting it, that will impact its useful life?
It is the latter. If it is buried and not being impacted by anything, there is nothing to cause deterioration. The geotextile itself is not a natural material, so it doesn't just break down over time.
So really, the only where that 15 years comes in, if it's actually if it's used, if it's activated, if it's directly protecting the parking lot. If we're wrong, let's say we're wrong and lake levels go down, and this was just an expensive precaution that wasn't needed as a result of that, the life of that of that system would be extended because the lake levels are lower and therefore not being used. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So if lake levels continue to decrease, to go down, and this oh, what's my battery running? Whose battery?
No,
Somebody-
that's my battery.
Okay. I'm plugged in here. I'm in my office. I'm still plugged in. So
It is
so-
my battery, and if I suddenly lose you, I will call you from my phone. So,
Okay,
but
okay,
go
all right,
ahead.
then I'll just wrap it up then. So,
Okay.
okay. So the last question I was going to ask, I'm not going to ask anymore because I was going to ask if we could do anything in-house with regard to this, but it sounds like that this is going to be much more, both the medium and the long term are much more elaborate than we'll be, that we have the capabilities of doing in-house. So
They
I'm
are.
not going to ask that question.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Cal, for cross-examining your expert witness.
Sorry
Margaret,
about that.
Margaret,
Yes.
I thought that was a perfect way of ending Cal with that little note that you put on about your battery. That was very cool.
I know. I copy and pasted that from earlier.
I only have one question.
Yes.
Cal has touched a lot of the ground. Early in our process of discussing the problems we had at Rosewood Beach, we talked about offshore protection.
Yes.
And after listening to, the various proposals for the onshore protection, it all comes back to wave action and the force of the waves.
Yes.
It's not necessarily a function, if there were no waves, of high water. It's the force of the waves combined with the high water.
Correct.
So putting all this into perspective, are we missing the point and should look at the offshore protections versus the onshore protections?
I can jump in and comment on that real quickly. So we did look at both the offshore and the onshore pretty extensively, generally speaking. And the reason that we moved to these revetment options, which has evolved into this trap bag, is the decision was made based on the philosophy that since we can't predict the future, we simply didn't want to continue to fight Mother Nature and really wanted to make sure we're protecting the investment rather than invest in something that would reduce, but certainly not end erosion, knowing that it will continue with these higher lake levels. And so that's why the decision was made to move forward with the revetment.
Okay, erosion will occur by high water, but it's the scouring effect of the large waves that takes out more of it. That's why I was going back to, are we missing the point, and maybe we should be focusing on the offshore protection, which we had the presentations a long time ago. And again, I'm not sure I know which is better or which is not better for us right now. Margaret, do you have any simple answer to that?
I would say that if we were to look at this in your level of effort, you are absolutely right that the high water levels and the waves are what are causing your erosion. By doing something offshore, you are breaking down wave energy and reducing its ability to pull.
Okay.
There she goes.
Margaret's battery.
That was my fault. I apologize.
Cal filibustered her right out of battery.
Well,
Biden wins, there's no more filibuster. You have to remember that.
Well, Margaret's going to phone in, I believe is what she said. I don't know. Let me ask the board. Are we in a position where we want to give direction today, or do we want to think about it and put it on the agenda for next 2 weeks? Let me start with Cal on that.
I want to know what Terry's eating first because
Now, it's let's keep focused because I don't want us to be here as late as we possibly could.
Okay, so my thinking is I don't think that the the 1 year solution or 1 year option is viable. I think it's a lot of money. And we've heard from Margaret that we should have enough we should have enough sand there to protect the parking lot, because really it's the issue is not the Chase, it's not the boardwalk, it's the parking lot that we're seeking to protect. And in fact, and listening to Margaret, and I know she just popped back on because it's in the 608 area code, is that the this decision doesn't need to be made now, because we could be 2 years, we could be 10 years from this being an issue. I think what we need to be focused on is what are we going to do to this location to remove the areas that are in danger, like the Chase Lounge and that bench and the part of the boardwalk, and what is that area going to look like so is aesthetically that it's pleasing, because it's right at the basically the entrance of the beach. And I think that we have not heard, or at least I haven't heard, or I didn't understand if they did say it, is that what is that area going to look like? It's going to be sand all the way up to there, and how is that sand going to get there, and what's the cost involved with that? So I think that's our imminent issue. With regard to the medium or the long term, it doesn't appear like this needs to be decided tonight.
Okay, Margaret, are you back?
Yes, I am here.
And I think you were going to speak to offshore, onshore when your battery went out.
Yes. Okay. So, there are multiple locations where we can install some type of protective measures. The very first would be in the offshore. As I mentioned, the sand is what is protecting your parking lot, and it's protecting your Chase Lounge, and it's being eaten by wave energy at high water level, which is extended further into the cove because of the high water level. So breaking down that wave energy reduces its capability of moving that sand offshore. Now, to break down that wave energy, you need either to tighten your entrance to reduce the penetration of energy, which we talked about. We talked about a semi-submerged weir system or a breakwater, which is underwater, which can trip the wave and reduce that wave. If it is too far underneath the water system, though, it does very little in wave reduction, and you're still going to get movement. Now, we talked about putting that weir or that bench in the entrance between the two breakwaters, so that even if your sand did get pulled down the shore, it didn't get pulled out of the cove. So that shallows out the entire area. So that helps, again, mitigate wave energy. However, you have to think about this at low water system, because high water doesn't, it is not sustainable forever. And at low water, it becomes exposed. It becomes a bit of a tripping hazard, and if it is high enough and enough sand gets caught behind it, it actually dries out and just becomes a dry area. People would actually have to exit the cove to reach the water if the water was low enough. So for those reasons, we moved into the cove and started to look at options to ultimately protect the parking lot inside. Also, those offshore options were rather expensive in themselves because it does require more rock, larger construction equipment, etc. So then we start allowing that sand on the inside to make its way out, but we are ultimately still protecting our critical infrastructure, being the interpretive cove and the parking lot itself. Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Great.
All right. Well, we were just talking about what our inclination is for now, and I think I'm getting suggested that maybe we should then defer and let everybody think about it until the next meeting. I think that there's, and that's where we were going, and I think Cal spoke about that, and I'll ask Terry now.
Yeah,
And
Barney, and I think Jeff will probably could comment on this a little bit further, but I think that's accurate. We don't need a decision tonight, but if we do want to consider doing construction of either the long-term or midterm option in the winter or spring, we would want to get moving on construction documents. And so if the board isn't comfortable making that recommendation to move forward with either option tonight and they want to think about it, certainly can readdress it at the next meeting. But I don't know if we have a drop dead date, Jeff, or Margaret, as to when we should make that decision to allow for us to be able to do this in the winter or spring.
So we've already entered into a contract with Smith Group for the construction documents and confirmed with Margaret that if we take the direction of going with the TRAP Act, it's not going to really impact that contract. But there is still quite a bit of work to be done on those documents. Margaret, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I would think if we waited till October 27th to make a decision on the medium or long term, that would not be too late to continue forward with this.
It is not too late, no.
The one thing that, and I'm going to make an assumption based on the comments in the conversation that we would not be pursuing that short-term option to get us through the next few months. That would be the only one we would need a decision on immediately. And even then, as I said, there's some hesitancy as to whether or not we could really pull it off in necessary time.
Well, let me just say, unless there's any of the commissioners who think that who feel that they want to take the vote or give the direction now, I would like to say, let's defer this to the next meeting.
Barney, one
Yes, sir.
additional thing. I would like a third option. And the third option I want you to at least to hear about is what the option would be to remove the chase lounge, move the bench, move that boardwalk, and not do the revetment. What are the costs involved with that, and how would that look?
We can come
Sure.
back with that too.
All right, so unless there's an objection, let's thank everybody for the time and the energy that was put into this, and there's a lot to think about, but I think we should defer to the next meeting. We'll make a decision. And if there's no objection, hearing none. Thank you, Margaret. Welcome back.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. You all have a nice evening.
You too.
All right,
So-
bye-bye.
Now, let's go to the draft of the 5-year capital plan. I guess we're back with Jeff Smith.
You can't get rid of me yet. All right. Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, it looks like am I still muted? Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. A little alert popped on my screen, said I was muted. All right, so what I'm going to do tonight is provide a summary on the 5-year capital plan draft. Now, I will say that this plan has been discussed and reviewed in detail with the Finance Committee. So the first slide here is an overall summary of the plan. This is a summary of the detailed capital plan that was included in the board packet. And you'll see here on the left-hand side, it's just broken up by the different areas of the district-wide, technology, parks, and facilities. I'll start with the first column here. So this is the approved capital budget for this year, for 2020. The next column is year to date. So it's where we are as of basically today with expenses for capital. And then the third column is what we're projecting for the end of the year for capital. And that ties into projects that we've deferred, projects we've eliminated due to the pandemic, and also projects that we've discussed with the board and made a decision to move forward with. So if you go down to the bottom, you'll see there's a difference between projected and the budget of about $3 million. And those are $3 million worth of projects that we have not moved forward with, whether it be eliminated or deferred to a future year, primarily due to the pandemic. And then the next column gives us our proposed budget for 2021, and then the further columns are our future years going out 5 years to 2025. Are there any questions on this slide? Otherwise, I will move to the next. All right. So I just want to talk a little bit. I know we've shared this with the board a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about a new approach that we've taken to capital this year. And it was certainly encouraged as part of the pandemic, but something we've been looking to do to make the prioritization a little more effective with our plan. So this is our new capital plan prioritization tiers. Each item in the capital plan is assigned a tier between 1 and 5, 1 being the highest priority and 5 being the lowest. So a brief description here. Tier 1 is a safety and legal compliance. So something that we're essentially required to do, whether it be part of a contract, maybe a grant agreement, or it's a safety hazard. Then tier 2 are a critical repair and replace of existing items. These would be existing infrastructure that need to be addressed, and if we don't address them in the proposed year, there's a concern that there could be a safety hazard, or they could turn into a larger expense or impact programming. Tier 3 are our scheduled replacements. So these are items that live in our plan that have so many years to them. And essentially, the year that they're recommended is the year that they will be reaching their useful life and need to be replaced. Tier 4, improve existing items. So this would be taking something that we currently have, but adding to it. It would not impact the status quo of what's happening, but it would improve upon. And then lastly, tier 5 is new items. So simply adding capacity or adding some new equipment. So also to talk about the plan a little more, I want to kind of diverge and talk about the Greenprint project, because the majority of the Greenprint projects are in the capital plan. So this shows a summary of all of the Greenprint items and how they are found in the plan. So I'm going to just start with a brief description. The first one here, the preserve, it's a tier 1. So we've got here, we show in each of the columns, we show the dollar amount that's budgeted in the capital plan. And then underneath that is a very overview kind of schedule showing when something's going to occur. So as you know, we've just wrapped up the planning. We've bid this project out, and we are moving forward with construction, hopefully a little later this fall. That's what it's showing here on the schedule. That construction will continue throughout next year. The next project, the Sunset Woods Playground and Master Plan. So we are very much right now, and we'll be wrapping that up. It'll wrap up this year, and then the hope is that we'll be able to implement and begin construction for the playground portion of that the next year. And that's, as you can see, is budgeted in construction for next year, beginning early next year. The Centennial Ice Arena as a tier 3. We are looking to the $150,000 in 2021 would be the planning dollars, developing the final plans for this, and then generally speaking, we'd be doing construction in the first 3 quarters of 2022. Now, the next one here, it says Centennial Ice Arena Gymnastics Improvement. This is looking specifically at the gymnastics area and determining where it should go and how it should be improved. And you'll notice that there's planning scheduled for 2021, and then the project picks up again in 2024. And that's because in 2021, it would only be staff time. There aren't additional dollars for this, but we want to coordinate the planning of gymnastics with the planning of Centennial and also the Westridge item just below, so that it all works in conjunction as part of a larger plan. The next item, the multi-purpose room Westridge planning, would be looking at Westridge facility and planning options for what to do for improvements to that space, or a building that does meet the needs of that space. And we are looking to expend dollars starting in 2021 for that. Next shows the items for Westridge building repairs, necessary building repairs that are in the capital plan right now, starting in 2022. And it's very possible, depending on what is decided for the planning for the Westridge multipurpose facility, some of these items may not need to be expended. And then lastly, we have the athletic field synthetic turf. There are not dollars in the capital plan for this at this time. However, there is planning discussions planned for later next year. Any questions about any of the green print items? All right, thank you. So I've gone back here and just shown another summary of the capital plan, but this goes back and shows it from the perspective of the tiers. So tier 1 to 3, which once again are safety, legal compliance, critical repair, and then the scheduled replacement. And pretty much all of the green print items do fall in that tier 1 to 3. And then tier 4 to 5, the improve existing items and new items. You'll see them there. Any questions about any of these? Great. Well, next, we're going to talk a little bit about the funding model, looking at the first one here. I'm going to ask Mary Lynn to take over in just a moment. The first one here is looking at the funding model, but only looking at tier 1 to 3 items, the maintenance items, as opposed to including tier 4 and 5. So Mary Lynn?
Jeff, and good evening, everyone. So as Jeff said, this first slide of the 5-year funding model shows our projected spending in tiers 1 through 3, so our maintaining capital projects. And you can see that this includes the bond proceeds from 2020, the 7.4 million. It also shows the bond issue, a projected bond issue in 2024 for roughly $5 million. You can also see in this in 2020 that we're showing the worst case scenario projection, the transfer of $1 million from the rec fund to the capital fund. And then you can also see that right now in the budget that we are working on for 2021, that we would expect to transfer $1.5 million to the recreation fund at the end of calendar year 2021. All that being said, it does look like we should be able to afford the capital projects that are listed in the capital plan that are in tiers 1 through 3. And Jeff, if we could go to the next slide.
There you go.
Thank you. And this slide shows all 5 tiers, which would be maintaining and improving the capital in our district. Same scenario here. You have the bond proceeds again. You have a potential bond issuance in 2024. Same worst case scenario as far as dollars transferred from the recreation fund to the capital fund. This does not paint as pretty as a picture, though. You can see that by the end of 2022, the capital fund would have a deficit balance of roughly $300,000. And before Commissioner Bernstein can ask me, I will just say that both of these 2 scenarios do include a full tax levy at the end of the year. And that's all I have. I can hand this back over to Jeff unless anyone has any questions on these 2 specific slides.
All right, thank you, Mary Lynn.
Thanks.
So with that said, I wanted to briefly go through and provide a summary of what tier 4 and 5 projects are in the 2021 capital plan, seeing that, as Mary Lynn said, it's not as favorable of an outlook, including all tier 4 and 5 over the next 5 years. So for 2021, there are dollars scheduled for our waste and recycling containers. This is something we have been implementing over the last few years, and we're looking to continue to add these receptacles to various parks. Danny Kniff Park, we have some repair or possible replacement to the fishing deck area there. Centennial Ice Arena drainage improvements near the building. Golf Learning Center, we're looking at some site planning for the overall facility there. Park Avenue Beach site improvements also for the facility. Park Avenue Beach, an automatic gate, which would provide a much better approach to control of the boat launch area than we were able to do this year, having staff manually open and close the gate. Recreation Center locker room renovation planning. This would be planning for those renovations that had to be put on hold. And then the actual project for construction is budgeted for the following year in 2022. And then the Westridge door classroom fobs. So that's all of the items that we have for 2021. Now, staff would recommend that we include these two tiers of items in the 2021 budget. However, I do want to note that depending on how the district ends fiscal year 2020 and how things go in Q1 and Q2 of 2021, if we did have to deprioritize any projects, these would be the first we would look at. And these are once again projects that we would possibly wait until later into next year to determine how things are going as to whether or not we would move forward with them. Any questions or comments on any of these items? All right, then lastly, I do have a few items that I'm looking for a little bit of feedback and discussion on. These are some items in the plan, and I will say the first item here is really more of just an update rather than discussion. This is the Deutsch playground replacement. This is a tier 3, and the next year we have $300,000 budgeted for this playground replacement. Now, as the board is aware, we have an agreement with the homeowners association for this area. That agreement, the initial 20-year term of that agreement, will be coming to an end in July of 2021. So, and also the playground is in need of replacement. It will be 20 years old at that point. The district has sent out a letter to the homeowners association requesting a meeting to discuss the agreement and talk about moving forward with this for possibly a future agreement. So once we have further information, we'll certainly be returning to the board with an update on that. The next item is the Moraine Park path repair. This is a tier 1, and in 2020 we're projecting $50,000, and in 2021 we have $450,000 budgeted. So in 2020, the $50,000, as the board's aware, we've provided an update on plans for this and proposed moving forward with construction documents to basically build this boardwalk over the failed areas and reopen the path, the area along the ravine and the dog beach. So the $50,000 represents dollars already spent utilizing the engineer, and then approximately $35,000, which would be moving forward with the construction documents and also construction oversight. So what we show in the plan here right now is, and the recommendation would be to move forward with that planning now and be prepared to move forward with that construction next year. And so this is an item that we're posing to the board, but whether or not we should keep it this way, or another option would be to move the planning for this to 2021 and possibly move the construction to 2022. However, keep in mind that that would keep the dog beach closed even longer. And I guess one last thing I'd like to point out is this proposal right now, we would need to get started with the planning relatively soon, and it would keep us in line to do construction in summer of 2021. Best case scenario, we'd be able to reopen that path and that beach in fall of 2021.
Jeff,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you asking for us to discuss this with you now as we proceed?
Yeah, yes, I am. Because we're looking for direction on, this is how it is in the plan right now, and whether we should keep it in the plan this way or we should make adjustments to it. Because this way, what we'd like to do is, by the end of this month, if we choose to keep it this way, staff will likely be coming to the board at the October 27th meeting with requesting approval to enter into the contract to complete the construction document.
Well, in that case, why don't we go through the process of talking about it? We'll start with Cal Bernstein. or Terry.
I have nothing to add at this point.
Okay, Terry?
So we're discussing the Marine Park Path repair?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think I'm the only one on the board who's been consistently in favor of looking at this. I feel like my point has been that we own this. It is a national, it is an amenity that community members have asked me about consistently over the past year. And I feel like we're probably never going to get to it if we don't do it. And that would be a real shame. There's some real treasures down there at that beach, even if it wasn't a dog beach. So, and it's not safe apparently to go down there. I haven't tried, but so that's the way I feel. I feel like I'm ready to vote for it.
Okay. Lori?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I don't really have a side on this one. I'm undecided, so I'm open to hearing what the other commissioners have to say. Thank you for that, Terry.
No problem.
Brian? Brian Kaplan?
Is Brian Kaplan still on?
Hold on, I'll see.
He's not listed anymore.
I just texted him, see what's going on.
Uh,
He says
Well,
he's having computer problems. He'll be right back.
okay, so why don't we just list the rest of the things so we'll be able to hear any conversation? Jeff, do you want to put out the rest of the
Yeah,
items?
I can go to the next item, yes. The next is the Sunset Woods Playground renovation and master planning. As we said a bit ago, we have the planning dollars in this year and then the construction dollars in next year. So we're currently under contract with a firm to develop both the plans for the playground and a master plan, and that's the 51,000. And then we have money budgeted to actually construct the playground next year with the goal of having that completed by the end of summer 2021. So once again, just looking for direction from the board to confirm that we will keep this in our plan as we have planned. And if you'd like, I can go through the next items.
Yeah, let's do that. Waiting for Brian to come online.
The next item, just to review, is the Centennial Ice Arena renovation that we talked about briefly earlier. So once again, we have dollars planned for 2021 for planning and then construction in 2022. And then the last two items, this will be pretty brief because we've talked about this, was the Rosewood Beach Boardwalk repair. I will say we are projecting $66,000 in 2020. That is money that we've already spent with Smith Group to determine the issues and determine repair options. Plus, it also includes repair option 3 that I had mentioned much earlier this evening. The estimated amount that Smith Group had for this, which was about $50,000. But I will say, while we don't have pricing yet, we've been speaking to contractors and we are optimistic that the pricing will be lower than that. And once again, I hope to come with a full report and possibly a recommendation at the October 27th meeting for that. And lastly is the Rosewood Beach revetment that we were just speaking about. So I do want to review what's in the capital budget. So this goes back to a question that had come up earlier about what do we have currently budgeted right now for that work. In 2020, these are the planning dollars, which we are already under contract for. And then in 2021, That's kind of like I would say the worst case scenario for expenses. At 750,000 would be if we had chose to move forward with both the revetment and the swimming and the interpretive cove.
Mhm.
However, based on recent discussions and previous meetings, it's certainly a recommendation of staff that the swimming cove is holding up very well and that a revetment would not be necessary at this time. And then you could reduce that down to 600,000, and that would be the revetment in the interpretive cove. So again, the direction we're looking for here is whether we should keep it budgeted at this amount, or possibly we could adjust it to the medium term option, or we could adjust it to just the cost to remove the chase and not do anything beyond that at this time. So that could certainly be discussed at the October 27th meeting when we come back with more information.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And I apologize, my computer kind of shut down for a second. And I don't know if we talked about this, but we've talked about Rosewood, we've talked about Moraine. Where does Park Avenue fit in all this?
We have dollars planned for planning, like site planning, master planning for Park Avenue for next year.
For next year, okay.
All right, Brian, now that you're back, we're on Moraine Park path repair and spending the $450,000 in 2021. Lori is, I think I'll use the word ambivalent. I'm sorry if that's a wrong word. Terry is very much in favor of it. And then we're coming to you to ask you your opinion as to whether we should do it next year.
Sorry, not ambivalent, undecided.
Okay. I apologize.
Well, I haven't changed that much. I think it's a lot of money for a path solely for a dog park. And I think it's a lot of money to spend on a path solely for a dog park when we've got issues at Park Avenue as well. So I'm not ambivalent. I'm not leaning towards it.
Okay. All right.
It's hard for me.
I will voice my view. I am not inclined to spend the money at this point with the many issues that we have that I think have a priority over this.
I don't think we heard from Cal.
Oh, you guys are tired of hearing from me.
Never.
I believe I agree with Barney on this one.
Right. Then what we could do is we could put planning dollars. We could simply remove the item from the budget, or we could put planning dollars in 2021 and earmark money in 2022 for repair, which means that, and then what that means is we could most certainly wait till later in 2021 after we see how things are going if we want to move forward with that planning.
I mean, I think that's the best way to handle it. We don't know where we're going to be COVID-wise, fees-wise, money-wise. It's just not a great time. But if we can put it off for a couple months till we can see, it might not be so bad.
Okay. We will do that with the, so what that will mean is that the path and the beach will remain closed through 2021. Most likely best case scenario would be mid 2022. We could possibly complete the repairs at that point. So we'll make that adjustment in the plan.
Okay. And then is there anyone who wants to discuss the Centennial Ice Arena renovation planning and cost in 2022?
Yes, I'll say something about that. I think that as Lori and I went through the green print, both the original and the 2.0, this was a priority. It's always been a priority. There's thousands of people who go through that. The facility is in need of a significant renovation. We've put this off. We keep deferring this because of legitimate reasons, but we keep deferring this. And I think that hopefully by 2022, we would have the COVID under control, that this would be a wise investment for the Park District to address. And I know that there is, we may not have to make this investment because I know that there's some grant opportunities that staff is pursuing. So I'm in favor of considering continuing moving on with that project.
Does anybody else want to speak to that? Well, while people are gathering their thoughts, I totally agree with Cal. Next year is a planning year. It's one of the facilities that's used by thousands of people. So I think we should keep it under the schedule. Is there anybody else who cares to speak to it? Going once, going twice. Thank you. Jeff, next slide.
That's actually it.
All
That's
right.
the presentation, unless there are any other questions or comments.
No, we're not hearing any. So
All right.
thank you,
very
Jeff.
much.
So we'll go to the COVID-19 Emergency Operations Planning Update.
Yeah, so thank you, Barney. I will kick it off. So can you guys hear me okay? Just want to make sure I am unmuted. Good.
You're good.
So believe it or not, today actually marks 7 months since the Park District closed all of our facilities and canceled all of our programs back on March 13th due to the concerns surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. Since that time, the Park District has had dedicated our time and resources to continuing the delivery of essential programs, services, and our facilities while ensuring the health and safety of our community and responsible management of fiscal resources. We've gone from providing free virtual programming during the stay-at-home order to outdoor recreational and leisure pursuits in phase 2 of the Restore Illinois plan, such as golf, tennis, our parks and natural areas, to eventually reopening our doors in phase 3 and phase 4 by carefully following the state mandated guidelines and in many cases exceeding CDC recommendations in effort to provide safe opportunities such as extended day camp programming and park school, early childhood enrichment to families who had essential daycare needs. As well, we expanded outdoor recreational programs by offering activities such as baseball, gymnastics, nature-based programs, outdoor fitness, swimming, boating, and even special events such as our drive-in movies. Overall, Highland Park residents of all ages, skills, and income levels had an abundance of opportunities to live an enriched life through the Park District this summer. So now that summer has unfortunately come and gone, we did extend our beach season and our fall season programs did begin in early September. And now as we approach November, our attention continues to be focused on creating the safest, healthiest, most comfortable environment possible for our community to enjoy all the essential recreation, sport, and leisure activities that they are used to. In doing so, not only is our Park District following every standard and guideline distributed by the CDC, IDPH, and DCEO, but we are going above and beyond by taking every precautionary measure to ensure community safety. This includes mandating essential PPE and social distancing, continued reduced class sizes and participants, advanced reservations, and of course, regular cleaning using EPA registered and hospital grade disinfectants. We have also invested in state-of-the-art UV systems at all of our facilities to safely and continuously sanitize the air from viruses and bacteria. You can go onto our website and you can follow a very easy to view video on our website and our Facebook page, which gives a complete list of guidelines and safety measures at each facility. So as we move closer to the colder months and prepare for increased indoor usage, we want to ensure the community that we are prioritizing health and safety, while also continuing to strategically plan for our community to continue participation in essential recreation activities that we know are so important for social, emotional, and physical health. I will note that we are also continuing efforts to provide outdoor and virtual recreation in many different formats as we possibly can through the winter months. With that, I'm going to turn things over first to Assistant Director Chris Melizuski, who is going to spend a few minutes just highlighting our upcoming fall session 2 programs, highlighting a little bit what we've already been doing indoors. And then I'm going to turn things over lastly to our Director of Human Resources, Donna Dunn, who is going to outline some of our safety protocol and communication if staff or a participant of the Park District did in fact have a confirmed case of the virus. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So as Executive Director Rome said, I'm going to go through each of our recreation areas with the exception of golf, highlighting where we're currently at in terms of participation for what will be our fall programming, and then touch upon very briefly what is in store for our winter activities. So first off, I'll touch on Centennial Ice Arena. Compared to 2019, participation rates are at about 50%. We do have both a fall 1 and fall 2 session, and combined to date for ice skating, we have about 130 unique participants over the course of 84 classes, whereas in 2019, we had about 250 unique participants throughout 102 classes. So as I said, we are at about 50% for our Learn to Skate program. Gymnastics are not, unfortunately, not doing as well. We do have to date 63 unique users taking advantage of our gymnastics programming, whereas and those 63 unique users have accounted for 66 registrations for the combination of about 40 classes. So that is about 20% of where we were for 2019. However, I will say it is encouraging to note that if the board does remember a couple years ago, we did implement a competitive gymnastics team, and that team has seen growth over the course of the years. And even in light of the pandemic, our team is growing to now 10 members. They meet 3 times a week. And the plan is in 2021 for that group to participate in competitive meets as guidelines allow. Package Ice is a pre-registered high-level recreational skate. This is a new system for 2020 in light of the pandemic. We have about 50 unique users, accounting for 277 separate registrations. Ice rental agreements are well over than that of 2019. Largely due to the fact that, if the board does recall, we did have to eliminate public skate for the year due to the pandemic, of course, and that ice time that was typically used for public skate has been rented by some of our hockey user groups. Moving on to Deer Creek, tennis participation simply still thrives as we transition from fall 1 to fall 2. Currently, we're at about 83% retention from 2019 from our adult tennis users. And for our youth group, we are at about 85% retention. So 2019, we had in youth participants, 410 unique users, accounting for 483 registrations over 79 classes. Whereas in 2020, it's not exactly apples to apples because we did have to implement a fall 1, fall 2, whereas fall 1 was outdoors. But we have accumulated 350 unique participants for 433 registrations over 76 classes. So we're really strong as it relates to tennis, and the appetite to come indoors for tennis particularly seems to still be there, seemingly due to the fact that tennis is an activity that can be done with social distancing measures in place. Our recreation area has retained about 80% of class participation year to date from 2019. We have approximately 335 registrations over 43 classes, whereas in 2019 we had 422 over 56 classes. If the board does remember, we did have to cancel our littlest park school participants, which we call the Sprouts, just due to the COVID-19 pandemic and some considerations as it relates to having to come close in proximity to children of that 2 and 3 age group for various activities like using the bathroom or cleaning up messes. The recreation department, as you may know, also manages our special events. I am happy to say that all of our special events to date have sold out, including our 2 upcoming drive-in movies, Hocus Pocus, as well as our Halloween event a week from this coming Friday that will be starting at Gottlieb Dog Park and moving through Deer Creek. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, one of the ever so popular Daddy-Daughter Dance special events in February will not be able to be offered, and staff is currently working on a supplemental offering so that the heads and daughters can have a night out to themselves. Heller Nature Center activity is very strong and is very comparable to 2019. Particularly our Stories in the Woods programs and after school activities have almost doubled in registrations, which have allowed for us to have about 82% retention. In fall of 2020, we have 77 unique users over our various classes, whereas in 2019, we had 94. The staff is also, as Brian said earlier, implementing virtual options for some of their school-based programming to supplement some of the school-based curriculum. Unfortunately, Nature Discovery Day had to be canceled. However, they did implement a new special event and a new activity at Heller called Light the Night Trail Adventure, which is a storytime night program, and participation is thriving. As it relates to Rosewood public programs, once again, very strong participation, largely due to the nature being outside. Currently, we have 42 unique participants, whereas in 2019, we had 48, largely due to the popular Stories in the Sand program. Once again, participation has doubled. I'm going to move on to the 2 activities that are planned moving forward to be implemented at the Recreation Center. First off is athletics. As the board recalls, the early fall season was very strong for athletics with over 200 or so participants in the sport of baseball. And as we transition indoors to basketball, we are currently at about a 32% retention rate from 2019. While that number is alarming, I will say that we are at current full capacity due to the fact that we only have 2 gymnasiums at athletics disposal, one court being at the rec center and the other being here at Westridge. Athletics is also implementing, starting in November, activities at the Highland Park Fieldhouse, which participation is very, very, very promising. We have both our baseball academy and our indoor flag football program starting in November. Combined, we have about 74 unique participants taking advantage of that tremendous amenity and program. Martial arts is at about 62% retention from 2019 and conducted here at Westridge. And with winter also comes the reintroduction, if you will, of privatized lessons, both in the sport of baseball and basketball. That is a new offering which was created in 2019 and has been very, very, very promising, and people are taking advantage of that today. Aquatics in our Learn to Swim program is at about 34% retention from 2019 numbers. Currently, we have about 60 users over our classes, whereas in 2019 we had 178. However, private instruction is proving to be more and more popular, having doubled from the month of August to the month of September. Lap swim is currently at 95% capacity, and in most cases simply sold out on a daily basis, which shows a need, for people's lap swim fitness activities. If the board does recall, Highland Park Aqua Club began renting on September 29th and are utilizing the facility 6 days a week. Also, NSSRA Gators use the swimming pool for their activities. as well as the foundation continuously working with staff to provide more FYI grant money for swim lessons for those in Highwood. So with that being said, before I give a rec center update, are there any questions about any of the highlighted activities or areas I mentioned?
I just have one question, Chris. So we don't have any access to District 112 gyms?
Not at this time.
Okay.
All right. Lastly, the recreation center. Since we resumed activity with the rec center on June 1st for outdoor group exercise, the facility and the various unique offerings that facility can house has seen 742 unique users. As a reminder, those 4 various activities are lap swim, which I spoke about briefly in aquatics, our group exercise program, personal training, and our general fitness floor access. If the board does recall, when we did open August 1st, we had daily fees, and we've transitioned now into a monthly pass option. And staff is currently working on developing an even greater membership plan to implement sometime in the middle of November that will be both cost effective and catered to people's individual needs. So with those various needs, this past week saw 85 unique users having 220 reservations for the fitness floor. This is the highest use per unique user to date at just over 2.5 uses per person. Group exercise also saw an increase over the last week or thereabout, largely due to the fact that there was classes not having to be canceled due to weather. So this past week, we had 159 unique users accomplishing 333 visits. Personal training for the past week had 69 unique users acquiring 86 sessions, or about 1.25 per person. This has remained consistent since we've opened our doors August 1st. And again, lastly, lap swim is at 99% capacity. And this past week, we've had 53 unique users for 117 reservations for a total of about 2.25 uses per person. So lots of activity going about district-wide, and I will take any questions if there are any.
Just one question. You gave us a lot of comparisons to previous years. Could you put together a little graphic that would show 2019 swim users and 2020 swim users, but so we can see a graphic representation of the difference? I think on the whole, I heard 20%, 30%, but I'd like to see it how it's represented in a graphic representation.
We certainly will attempt that for you, President Ruttenberg. The one thing I do have to mention is it may provide challenges simply because the process of which we've asked people to reserve various activities is unique to 2020 in light of the pandemic. But we will certainly attempt that for you.
Well, yeah, we know how many people use the rec center.
Sure.
And I just want to I heard some very good numbers just now of use, and we all know that this is a challenging time, but I think it would be good if we could see a representation as to what it looks like. And I know that Mary Lynn does really well at making those charts for us.
She will be my first call. You have my word.
And Chris, I would make sure you have a footnote on, especially like the rec center and other facilities. Obviously, the hours of operation are materially different now than they were in 2019. They're closed. I mean, for example, the rec center, I believe, is not even open on Sunday. So obviously that will help. That's going to impact the numbers regardless. But if you could also note the change in our availability of the facilities in those graphs, because so that they'll help explain if there's any differences and then what the differences may be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that for you, for the board. That'd be no problem.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you again.
So now that Chris has kind of gone through a lot of the programs and services that we have been doing and are doing, we're going to turn it over to Donna, who's going to talk a little bit about some of our safety guidelines, just to give everybody a little bit of information of kind of what goes on behind the scenes, if in fact there were a participant or a staff member who did have a case of or a confirmed case of COVID-19. So Donna, are you?
Yep, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so as Executive Director Romes mentioned, we have a lot of new practices and policies in place in response to COVID-19. While all of our efforts are in hopes to avoid positive cases, these practices also help us in the event that there is a positive case. Regardless of whether it's an employee or a patron, we work directly with the Lake County Health Department and follow their guidance based on the facts that they collect through their investigation of cases and also through contact tracing. So I want to briefly review the process with you guys of what we would do and what we have done when we have a positive case involving an employee. Please know that the process is very similar when it's a patron, but it is easier to kind of explain if we're using an employee as an example. So as soon as the district is notified of a positive test result, the employee is immediately directed to stay home. They have to self-isolate and they await instructions from HR. We then notify the Lake County Health Department via an online portal that's been set up, and we get a caseworker that has been assigned to us, and they partner with us throughout the entire process when the employee is out due to COVID. I also then work with the employee and their supervisor to perform contact tracing, and we look at the hours and days that they spent at work. And the health department also works with the employee for contacts that may have occurred outside of work. So if we know when the employee's symptoms began, we use the 48-hour period before the onset of the symptoms to identify the indirect and the close contacts. And that's under the guidance by the health department and the CDC. If we don't know the date that they started experiencing symptoms, or if they were asymptomatic and never had any, we use the previous 14-day period to help determine who those contacts were. You may have heard a lot of talk about indirect or close contact. So we follow the definitions as provided by the CDC and the health department. So in our cases, indirect contacts would be anybody that was in the facility at the same time as the diagnosed employee, or anyone that may have interacted with that employee during the tracing period, but was not what is considered close contact with that person. Close contact, on the other hand, is being within 6 feet of that person for a prolonged period of 10 minutes or more, or having direct contact with secretions of that person, like being coughed or sneezed on. So when we're performing our contact tracing for employees' interactions at work with patrons or other coworkers, we use registration logs, payroll records, security cameras, meeting schedules, and any other means that we have available to us to make sure that we're identifying anyone that positive case may have come in contact with. And we also, like I said, work with the employee to make sure that that list is complete. Once we have that, indirect and close contacts are all notified of the exposure and the type of exposure. And we also include any recommendations that the health department has provided to us for those people. Anybody that is deemed a close contact would be instructed to self-quarantine for 14 days. With all of the guidelines and the policies and procedures that we have in place for employees and patrons, and the extra safety precautions that we've enacted in all of our programs, if they're followed, there should be very little chance of close contact under these definitions. So in most cases, we will have indirect contact, which is just, be vigilant, be paying attention, make sure you don't have any symptoms, keep following our social distancing practices, but there's no need to self-quarantine. So in combination with the contact tracing, HR also works again with the employee and the supervisor to determine what areas in any district facility the diagnosed employee was in over the prior 7 days. This is, again, the CDC and Health Department recommendation, and they also partner with us as we're evaluating the different areas in each facility that may have been impacted. So any area that the employee was in during the prior 7 days has to be closed, cleaned, and disinfected. Again, that's if it's within the 7 days. So depending on the position of an employee and the different areas of any building that they may have been in during that 7-day period, we could decide to close the facility completely in order to perform that necessary cleaning and disinfecting, or if it was very isolated areas that may not be necessary and we can just close off that specific area that they were in. Now, if the employee has not been in that facility in the last 7 days and it's been more than 7 days, there is no need to close the facility, close the area, do any additional disinfecting or cleaning. Our standard cleaning and disinfecting would just continue. And that's because after that 7 days, that's no longer a requirement or a recommendation by the CDC or the health department. The health department also helps to determine and provides us when the employee is released to return to work. This typically occurs after they have isolated for 10 days after the onset of their symptoms, or they get the positive test result, and that they've been without fever or symptoms for at least 3 days. Now, if it's a case of just a close contact, that employee can't return until they've self-quarantined for a full 14 days, because that's when the CDC and the health department believes that they might have an onset of symptoms if they were exposed and did contract it. We did have this plan and our protocols reviewed by the Lake County Health Department recently, and they were pleased with the process, our response, our follow through, and the timing of that, and actually didn't require any additional action on our part. So it was good to have that additional confirmation from the health department. They've been great to work with. But that is, again, a brief overview of our process as it pertains to employees, and it's very, very similar when we would be dealing with any patron issues or program participants. So I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Well, that was very comprehensive. It looks like it's an amazingly complicated process though, isn't it?
It is, and it changes with each case and situation, but we have a really good base to work off of, and we're really lucky to have such a good partner as the Lake County Health Department.
Well, it's great that we have them. It's too bad we have to have them. So.
True.
Does anybody have any questions for Donna? Hearing none, let's move on then. We're going to go to 2021 budget planning with Director Peters.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah.
Let me jump in ahead and say I've reviewed the vouchers and they're all consistent with our policies.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So now we can focus on the budget process.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the screen, the fall winter finance schedule draft? Okay, perfect. We did briefly look at this last month, but we're going to focus a little bit more closely on what our budget planning looks like, just to keep everybody abreast of what has been going on. So we do have a process when it comes to budgeting here at the Park District, and all staff do input their first round of budget numbers into our budget programming software called Encode, which feeds into our general ledger. And everyone has gone in and input all of their anticipated revenues and expenses based on Illinois being in phase 4 for next year. After everybody inputted all of their amounts, our executive director and our finance director reviewed all of the data by cost center with the appropriate staff involved in each area. At this point, we have staff working on refining the numbers that were originally input into the budget. And as you can see on our calendar here, we are anticipating having the budget completed by November 12th. So there will certainly be some more back and forth among staff here. But at that point, November 12th, we do expect to have a what I would call a final draft that then will be presented on November 19th to the Finance Committee. We will take any questions, recommendations, whatever may come out of that meeting, refine the budget more, and then bring it back to the Finance Committee again on December 3rd. If any more changes come out of that meeting, we actually have set aside a third Finance Committee meeting on January 7th, where we will have one final look at that budget before it goes before the entire board at the workshop meeting on January 12th. After that workshop meeting, the budget sits for 30 days. It gets published on February 11th that we are going to have a public hearing regarding the 2021 budget. And then at the board meeting on February 23rd, we will have a public hearing, which will then be followed by a board vote to approve the budget. And then shortly thereafter, the budget does get taken to the county and gets filed, as is our legal responsibility. So does anyone have any questions on our budget, our 2021 budget planning and the schedule related to it?
I don't, if there's, let's go and ask, does anybody have any questions? Because I'd like to bring up a budget topic if there are no other questions.
I have no questions.
Me neither.
Lori, Cal?
No questions.
Well, I'm not sure if Cal has anything to say or not. I know that we're in the middle of the budget process.
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you, Cal. I know we're in the middle of the budget process, but I wanted to bring up one topic that I've heard from many people is important to them. And I know that there was a comment made earlier about it. I do not think we should raise taxes in 2021. I think that there's, and I could give all the reasons, but I think they're intuitively obvious. And I know the effect that it might have on us going forward. But I think, in my personal opinion, I believe we owe it to the taxpayers in our community to hold the taxes as we did for this past year. That's all I have to say about it, but I think I'd like to have other people's comments because it would be a guidance to our group as they make their budget. So maybe we should go in inverse order, just to be different.
All right, I tend to agree with President Ruttenberg. I am not a big fan of raising taxes at this point in time, especially with everything going on.
And since we're going backwards, the next person would be Lori.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Quite honestly, I don't know how we could, raise taxes and use that money. We're not offering the same services. We're being creative, but it just doesn't feel right at this point. I mean, and I not only hold taxes, I'd like to see if we can cut a little bit somewhere. Again, we're not providing everything we've had in the past. I need to be very, very conscious about our spending moving forward. So I agree with that not only do we hold the taxes where they are, I'd like to see us make them not be big, but I'm sure there's somewhere we can find.
Lori, thank you. Terry?
So you're just asking this because we're looking at the budget the finance schedule and
Yeah, it's all part of the budget process. If we're not going to increase taxes, that tells us that the dollars coming in are, what we had in 2020 probably. And again, I'm not going to get into the math of it. And that means the budget has to be driven on no increase in revenue from taxes. And we're in the middle of the budget process now. Yeah, the beginning of it, the first third.
yeah, I mean, my inclination is not to raise taxes either, certainly. You don't ever want to say something that you can't, as we're hearing from our Supreme Court justice, want to promise something and then not be able to deliver on it. You know what you don't know. My inclination would not be to raise them. That's for sure. That's all.
Okay. Cal?
Just to be clear, and I'm not trying to play lawyer, we're not talking about raising taxes. We're talking about raising the levy. Is that correct?
I'm not going to get into the technicality of how we do it. Whether it's the levy, it's raising taxes, whatever the words are. We
Okay.
should not collect any more money from the taxpayers than we did in 2020.
Well, I'm going to give you some pushback on that because it's it's easy to say that we'll not raise taxes, but it's more complicated than that because there's really and correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Lynn, but there's other things in place. There's two things that we can do to impact a taxpayer, a property taxpayer's a tax bill. One is with regard to the levy, which we issue every year. The other is with regard to the new construction levy. What my understanding is that if we don't levy for new construction, Mary Lynn can opine upon this, is that we lose the ability to levy against that new construction forever. And I would not want to see us tie our hands with regard to the more nuanced issue with regard to collecting from properties that are coming online by just blatantly saying that no new taxes.
Well,
Second
Cal,
thing, can I finish, please?
wait. Let me interrupt for a half a second. I am just simply saying, and how it's implemented. If a taxpayer paid us $200 on their home in 2020, that's what I want them to pay in 2021, if not less.
But we can't control that because we're only one variable in a tax bill. Because other aspects of the tax bill would be the assessed valuation of the property. It would be the equalization factor that is placed on by the assessor. So we do not have the ability to tell a taxpayer that if he paid $200 to the Park District this year, that he's going to pay $200 next year. That's out of our control. So we really should be talking about the levy, and we shouldn't be talking about taxes, period, because then we're not being precise.
Well, Cal, I'm going to, just for the first time in 7 years, say, I don't care about being precise right now. This is a detail to work out, but it's a concept that I'm trying to get across.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be precise.
I know,
Okay.
well, I don't.
I think Cal's right, though. I think that the tax levy, I think it's the levy we're talking about, but the idea is the same. We all understood it. We all understood what you meant, Barney, but yeah, Cal's being,
Technical.
more accurate. Yeah,
Okay.
which is fine. But yeah,
Okay.
we don't taxes, you're right.
Okay, so that being said, I understand and I applaud this discussion because I think it's necessary. There's a lot going on. But I think this also has to be in context with we just reviewed the 5-year capital plan. And if you looked at it closely, and we spent 2 hours at the last finance committee meeting going over it, is that in 2 or 3 years, we are running in the red with regards to our capital projects. So if it's the consensus of the board to not increase the levy this year, that has repercussions not only this year, but has repercussions in the years in the future. And I think that has to be done in concert. And it can't be done just unilaterally in a vacuum, in a silo. I think it needs to be done in concert with our 5-year capital plan, because that's really where where the dollars are, we're spending the dollars on. And so we would all realize that if we decide to not to increase the levy this year for existing, not putting new construction aside, but if we decide not to do that, that has to be done in concert with the 5-year capital plan, because either that's going to defer matters, it's going to eliminate matters, and we would have to, and before I opine, and I agree, or whether I do or agree or not agree, I want to know how that's going to impact the ability for us to fund our 5-year capital plan, because we have a laundry list of projects that are unfunded, not including the ones that are funded. And so I like to know, we have to have our eyes wide open that if we do that gesture to the community, that we are willing to defer or completely eliminate potential projects down the road.
Cal, those are very valid points. And the purpose of my bringing it up now is so that our staff can take a look and generate the results and provide it to us, which would involve capital, would be operations, all of that.
Okay. And
But wait, Cal, if we didn't tell them to do it, we won't know, they won't do it because they'd be operating on a different parameter for the budget.
So I have a question. What are we talking about with the potential increase? I know Lori is mentioned actually seeking to reduce, but I know that we are through tax cap, we are limited on what are we actually talking about? Mary Lynn?
You know what, Cal, let me clarify, because again, I think I understood what Barney was referring to, but I would actually, I would like to see, as we're speaking of budgets, I would like to see everyone sharpen their pencil. And I know that it seems like a hard thing to do, but it's really, really not. We are not offering the same programs as we used to. Yes, we're finding other ways to do it, but we're not spending what we spent in the past. And, this is the time, we are a tax, we rely on taxes, and we are not a corporate, private company. We need to answer to these residents in good faith. I'm not using the facilities. I'm not doing all these things. So where do I see the savings? And the least we could do, like I said, is sharpen our pencils when it comes to the budget. Be mindful. Cut where you can. Every little bit counts.
All right. So Mary Lynn, what's the increase in the CPI this year? What are we actually talking about?
It's 2.3%, which is roughly $1.2 million.
Okay. All right. So that's what so I think is that Barney, is that what you're talking about? Is that 2.3%?
I'm going to say it. We hold the taxes steady. I don't know what the right words are. I don't know whether it may be the levy. I'm not going to get into, I am at this point not able to look at the right words on a piece of paper. But Marilyn, do you understand what I'm trying to do?
I do, and let me I'll sum it up so I make sure we're on the right path for what you want to see at the next finance committee meeting. So you're saying you want to keep the tax levy frozen, so to speak. And I will say what Commissioner Bernstein was saying is true. So even if we were to say we are freezing taxes and not increasing them by the allowed CPI of the 2.3%, that people's taxes will change based on what their EAV is, and those are ever changing. So, even though we can say we're freezing them, then when it gets to Lake County, so understand that.
Yes.
Now, what I think I'm hearing too, though, is that the new property that comes on the books, that we should assess those people taxes because, in essence, they didn't live here before. So I'm not increasing their taxes. They're just getting their introduction to taxes of the Park District of Highland Park.
Agree with that, of course.
Okay. And then the third component that we have is the special recreation fund, which is taxed at 0.04%. So that would remain the same, that would in essence be flat too. That pretty much remains flat every year because that's just a percentage of the EAV that's out there.
I think that those are the words I probably should have used.
Okay. Okay, no, great. I just want to make sure I understand what everyone's saying so that we can present what you're looking for at the next finance committee meeting.
Okay, and I'd be curious to see what, to follow this logic, what the school districts do, because obviously people aren't using the schools and we're learning remotely, is if the school district would follow suit and do something similar, because obviously they're not spending the same money that they did previously on their schools.
Well, I can't speak to that, but I did talk to our mayor about this. And except for the required pension deposits and the union increases, her plan is not to raise taxes either.
Well, the city routinely doesn't do that. That's not out of the ordinary.
Well, whether it's out of the ordinary or not, it's a confirmation of, I think, the feelings that we
I know.
have to do something for our.
I mean, I would prefer just to focus on us, because the city has a different funding model than we do. They have sales tax, from car dealerships, and they have a lot of different ways of raising revenue. Like, for example, it's hard to compare us with the schools, because obviously we have a different funding model also with regard to how we can get our funds. So it's hard to compare us to our sister governments, because we each create revenue a different way.
And the only reason I brought it into the conversation is to say that we're not going to be an outlier in doing something good for the community.
Okay, but just so we're clear, is what you're proposing, and again, I'm sorry to be, to play lawyer on this.
But you are.
Okay, but you're proposing is that we would freeze the levy, and we did this, by the way, 10 years ago. I mean, I was on the board. I feel like I'm on the board forever now, but we did this 10 years ago, and we did not raise the levy, I believe, for and Brian, you could probably remind me how many years that we did not increase the levy at that point.
4.
Yeah, it was 2 years. It was 2 years.
Yeah, so we did it. It's not without precedent that we did it. We did this 10 years ago, but I just want to make sure that we all understand, if we decide to take that course, what something has to give and what that is, and obviously that's got to be the staff's obligation to try to figure that out.
Yeah, and I will add, I mean, obviously it's our job as staff to provide the board with the most relevant and useful information so that the board can make the best decision based on what is in the best interest of the Park District and the community. Obviously, those 2 years were significantly different for many reasons, but we certainly can look back at those and explain what happened then, what the effects were, and why those decisions were made at that time. And then also,
let's just, there's a lot of noise in this. Let's just look forward. Let's not look backwards. We understand that things were done, things were different. Many factors were different. Let's look forward, though.
I disagree. I'd like to know the repercussions for doing that, because listen, I voted for it 10 years ago, so I get it. But I think that if we're going to pursue this, I think that as fiduciaries for the community, that we have to be able to say, okay, we knew what the repercussions were doing and what issues that may arise, or maybe there are no issues. I think that it's the staff's duty at this point is to educate us of what is entailed by doing this and how that impacts the finances of the district. And I think that as board members, we should know that information before we vote on something like that.
Right. Can I jump in for a second? And I thought we just kind of went over this too when we were discussing what we wanted to do for the current year. Didn't we talk about this? What the repercussions would be if we took less than the amount we were allowed to take? And then we did a look back 10 years and we saw what happened in it. And it was like it made the ripple effect, the butterfly effect of it.
It has a going forward effect.
Yeah, right. So we just did not more than 3 months ago, maybe even less. Here's the other thing too, is that wouldn't this kind of be a double whammy too? If our revenues from programming is down and then our tax intake is down, I mean, this is more than taking just a sharpening our pencil. This is wielding an axe. If we think about it this way, in my opinion. That's why I'm saying we have to be nimble I think, be more flexible than just, it almost sounds like we're pandering in a way. And I'm,
Not at all. I think that's almost an insult to say. There's no pandering here. You know, with a community, you know, maybe we think that everybody in the community is doing just fine, but they're not. I mean, a lot of people that I know have had their income cut 30, 40, 50%, some even more. So I think we're not pandering, and I resent the use of that word. I think what we're doing is reflecting the pain that our community is suffering. But at this point, why don't we let the staff?
No, Barney, you brought up this discussion. I think we'll conclude the discussion. I think that I'm not saying one way or the other. I mean, you've pretty much taken the position this has to be done. What my position is that I think that we need to make an educated decision with regard to knowing the information, you know, how this impacts things, and the fact that our revenues are down, how this is going to impact everything. I think we just can't point blank make the blatant statement right now. This is what the conclusions would be. I think we need to educate ourselves to get to the point where we can make that conclusion.
that's what I'm saying.
That everybody is saying the same thing, but we're not pandering, and I was taking exception to the use of the word.
But you were taking exception before that anyways. You have a set position. You've done this before. You have a position, and anything that's against that position, you consider it insulting. And I've been here before with you on this,
Okay,
and not just on this issue.
Really, I think we're off track here. I think we're off track.
No, because you start with the end in mind.
Terry,
And-
Terry, it's
Well,
off
I'm
track.
sorry. Other people could filibuster on this thing, and so it's my turn right now.
It's not
Okay, there's
attacking
preconceived
the
how this
behaviors
is going
that
to
you have.
end. Well, Lori, I don't like talking over each other, but the fact is I was speaking, and I'm saying that sometimes leadership on this board has a preconceived notion of how something should go, and
Absolutely
they throw it out there. and then-
record that this is inappropriate
Okay.
conversations and topics. How very unprofessional. I'm disappointed. This is not appropriate right now, Terry. If you'd like to have a conversation or find a better word choice, because this is I'm extremely
Well,
uncomfortable. I'm
Word
very
choice
disappointed.
and what? What word did I use? That was
Not
nice.
attack leadership, Terry. I'm done. I'm done with this conversation. I'm not going to say another word about it.
Well,
Terry, you can call me when you feel that you'd like to discuss this. I am not taking a draconian position. I am saying I would think the taxes should be frozen. That's what I said. We had a discussion about it. We have other commissioners who have agreed with that position. We tell the staff to please review it and see what the ramifications are. And we're not voting today to do it. I've expressed my opinion, and several other commissioners have expressed the opinion that they too would like to see the taxes held constant.
And if it was a perfect world, I said that too. But I don't want to start with that as the end, because we have to be nimble. We have to be flexible. We can't just say that and then work all of our machinations just to make that happen without, like what Cal said, without finding out what the repercussions of it. If our revenues are down from programming and our taxes are down because we want to be sensitive to the community, then there's going to be major repercussions for that. And so I want to find out what those are before I, sign on to something like that. So,
And all we've said is for staff to now go and generate the review, the analysis, so that we can discuss it. But I'm not, and you accuse me of being draconian or whatever the appropriate word is.
any word like
And
this.
because we're now at the point where we can move this to the staff and they can develop the numbers to see what the ramifications will be. And from my perspective, I definitely would like to see the taxes frozen. But to do that, there will have to be a vote of the board. And if it turns out that others don't, and it's a majority, that's the way it will work.
And I would probably say at the next finance committee, I would encourage other board members, all board members to attend if possible. We can even look at a different time if necessary, but I think in discussing staff, we certainly have our order, I think, based on this discussion to go back and model what operations and capital would look like in both scenarios, and what those effects would be with or without a levy, with the CPI and without the CPI. And we can project how that would, what impacts that would have on the Park District and potentially the community in either direction. And then Mary Lynn, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to that?
You know, I do. And just a couple of clarifying things, just, you know, hearing what everyone had to say. I would just say, one thing to keep in mind is a park district. So we definitely are different than other types of government. So versus a city or a village or versus a school district. We are tax capped here at the Park District. And so other units of government are not necessarily, such as usually cities and villages. And so our hands are tied in that. If you recall back to Jeff's presentation this evening, you know, the soonest we could really issue bonds again are 4 years out, whereas someone who does not have a tax cap, like a city or a village, you know, they are not, they don't have to wait if they needed to issue more bonds or debt certificates. That is, you know, they're more able to do those sorts of things than we are. And I think someone said that the city is freezing taxes. My understanding, their most recent publications are saying that they are going to raise taxes to cover revenue lost by vehicle stickers. So that's just, you know, something else that I just want everyone to know that is our understanding. Obviously, we don't work for the neighboring, the city or the school districts, but that's actually what we have received in writing, the most recent things that I have seen. And so you may be privy to something more.
No, I knew that, I understood that they were going to capture certain losses and certain mandated increases, but generally speaking, they weren't. But let's work through the paperwork, work through the numbers and see what the effect is.
Yeah, we will absolutely have that for you at the next finance committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
And so the next topic we have is a closed session, and there's a couple things that I'm not sure that we even need a closed session today, Brian.
We do. We do.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we will have a closed session. Closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Open Meetings Act, and that is section 2C21, discussion of minutes lawfully closed under the act. So is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Brian and was seconded by
Brian.
Is there any? I will second it. Okay, fine. All right. Do we need a vote to go into closed session? All in favor?